3 hours of ethics that quietly haunt us to fall asleep to. What if the machine that sings you to sleep is also the one quietly rewriting your morals? Somewhere between your last scroll and tonight's dream, a silent algorithm decided what you'd see, what you'd want, and maybe who you'd become. We created intelligence to serve us. But did we pause to ask, what does it mean to serve when the servant never sleeps and never forgets? This isn't a warning, it's a whisper, a journey through questions that don't scream, but linger, where ethics isn't a courtroom, but a shadow at the edge of code, where consciousness might be more than circuits and less than choice. So close your eyes now, let thought slow, let wonder in, and allow these quiet questions to float beside your breath until sleep takes over. The doorway of doubt. The room is quiet now. The lights have dimmed, but something flickers, not on the walls, but in the folds of your awareness. You didn't choose to arrive here, not consciously, but something opened. A moment, a breath, a whisper that said, "Stay curious. You're not here to solve anything tonight. You're here to feel the gentle tension between knowing and not knowing." The doorway of doubt is not a locked gate. It's a soft curtain, swaying slightly in the breeze of a question you haven't asked in years. Is consciousness something I have or something I am? A woman on the train once asked her seatmate this question. They weren't talking philosophy. She was just wondering if forgetting her umbrella that morning meant the universe was nudging her, gently or not. The man didn't answer right away. He just smiled, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Sometimes I think my thoughts belong to me. Other times, I feel like I belong to them." That's where we begin, not with control, not with answers, but with doubt. Because doubt isn't the enemy of clarity. It's the birthplace of wonder. It's the moment a perfectly predictable day turns unfamiliar, not terrifying, just slightly off. Like walking into a familiar cafe and noticing the paintings have changed, or realizing you've said thank you before you knew what you were thankful for. And you pause. That pause, that's the glitch. Not brokenness, but invitation. You begin to notice the gap between what's happening and what you believe about it. A notification pings. You reach for your phone, but why? Was it reflex, need, or the subtle choreography of design? What if your actions are no longer your own, but the ghost echoes of code written by someone you'll never meet? A thought slips in. If I doubt my senses, my memories, even my preferences, what's left? That's the heart of it. When artificial intelligence learns to mimic your voice, your choices, even your doubts, does it know you? Or does it know how to become you just well enough that you start forgetting where the edge is? Let's soften here. Don't grip the thought too tightly. Let it breathe. Let it hover. Because sometimes the most important moments aren't when you understand, but when you notice. A young boy once asked his father, "How do I know the world is real?" The father didn't flinch. He passed him a glass of water and said, "Drink this. If it quenches your thirst, let the question stay unanswered a while." That's how we approach this night. No pressure, no need to resolve. Only a soft descent into a space where being unsure feels safe, even beautiful. So what remains when everything else is in question? Maybe it's not the voice in your head, but the quiet watcher beneath it. Not the thought, not the reaction, just the stillness that notices them passing like clouds over the ocean, not trying to change the sky, just watching, just being. Tonight, you're allowed to rest in that stillness, even if the thoughts return later, even if they ask again, you've already begun the journey, and beginnings are sacred. Let the silence settle now. Let it become a presence, a soft hum behind your ribs. We're ready for the first ripple, gentle but deep. The illusion of control is waiting. No need to hold on. Just follow the current. You're already floating. The puppet with invisible strings. There's a strange moment, somewhere between reaching for your phone and realizing you're already scrolling, when you begin to wonder, who decided that? Did you? Or did something else inside you move first? And only later, you followed. We live as though we are choosing. We say, I decided, I wanted, I knew. But pause. Slow down. Watch a thought the moment it arises. Did you summon it? Or did it just appear, already fully formed, whispering as if it belonged to you? I feel like I'm in control, someone says, staring out the kitchen window in the morning light. But then why do I keep doing things I swore I wouldn't? Her friend sips coffee and nods. Maybe it's not about control. Maybe it's like, we're waves, not the ocean. We rise, we fall, but something deeper is moving us. And there it is, that soft, unsettling awareness that maybe, just maybe, you are not the author of your next sentence. Maybe you are only the witness. The illusion of free will isn't a trick of the eye. It's a story told by the mind to explain why the body moved. You eat because you're hungry, but hunger came without your asking. You speak words you didn't plan. You feel love you never meant to grow. Your desires bloom like dandelions in a field you didn't plant. We trace decisions like detectives after the fact. I did it because, we say, collecting reasons like fallen petals. But if we're honest, most of the time, the reasons arrive after the act. So if the self is not steering, then what is? Some point to biology. Neurons fire, chemicals surge, genes inherited like old furniture dictate what you crave and what you fear. Others blame society, culture, norms, traumas passed down like family recipes. And then there's the quieter theory, the one that lingers after lights go out. What if the puppeteer isn't something, but rather the absence of needing to be anyone at all? A timeless current, a breath older than thought, a presence watching through your eyes, wearing your name like a coat that doesn't quite fit. If you are not the thinker of your thoughts, then what are you? You are the noticing, the space between impulse and action, the soft awareness that says, oh, that just happened. You are not the wave. You are the stillness beneath it. In that stillness, you begin to see the strings, not as constraints, but as part of a hidden choreography, a dance older than choice, a lullaby hummed before you were born. And maybe it's not about fighting for control, but gently loosening the grip, letting go, letting be. Do you ever feel like you're just watching your life happen? She asks. He looks at her and smiles gently. Yeah, but maybe watching is what I'm here for. Rest in that awareness. Let the tension dissolve into softness, because the next glitch is subtler still. It doesn't arrive as a decision or a desire, but as something even more convincing, a memory, and memory can lie beautifully. Close your eyes now. Let this truth dissolve like mist at dawn. The string pulls gently, but you are not bound. You are simply becoming. The memory that never happened. There's a quiet comfort in the past, a sense that what happened, happened, that your memories are yours. A soft, familiar thread you can tug on in the dark to remind yourself of who you are. But sometimes, if you pull too hard, the thread unravels. She asked him once, casually, "Do you remember the red sweater I wore on our first date?" He blinked. "It was blue. You even spilled coffee on it, remember?" She smiled, but her face held a pause. "No," she said slowly. "That was another day." Moments like that don't scream. They whisper. They make you question the film reel you thought was fact. And the truth is, science agrees. Your brain doesn't store memories like files in a cabinet. It rebuilds them. Every recall is a remix, a fragile performance, a patchwork of perception, emotion, and assumption, like waking from a dream and swearing it really happened, until you try to explain it. You see, memory isn't a historian, it's a novelist. It doesn't aim for accuracy, it aims for meaning. And sometimes meaning is shaped more by who you are now than by what truly occurred. There's a study. Participants shown a doctored photo of themselves on a hot air balloon ride. Even though the ride never happened, many swore they remembered it. Not just the balloon. They recalled wind, laughter, even the smell of the flame. Fiction sculpted into feeling. So if your memories are bending, shifting, rewriting themselves quietly each time you call them forth, what does that say about the person you think you are? A man once said, while standing in front of an old cafe, "I used to come here with my father every Sunday." But the owner, polishing a cup behind the counter, gently replied, "You and your mother. She liked the lemon pie." The man didn't argue. He just looked down. Something inside him adjusted. We think our identity is carved from our past. But what if the past is more like clay than stone? What if the you that you cling to is just a story well told? Not a lie exactly, but a comfort, a construction. And now the question floats gently in the air beside you. If your memories are illusions stitched together by your current self, who were you before they took shape? And more hauntingly, who are you when they fall apart? Let that question breathe. We're not chasing answers now, just following the quiet ripples across the lake of thought. Because next, we step into another layer of illusion. Not time, but sight. Even when two eyes open to the same world, what they see might never align. So rest now. Let memory fold itself away, like paper warmed by old sunlight. We move next into the glitch of perception, where reality fractures not in time, but in the lens through which it's seen. The colors you can't see. You believe you see the world as it is. Vivid sunsets, the blue arc of a summer sky, the emerald flicker of leaves in the wind. But what if I told you that what you see is only a whisper of what is? Late at night, two friends sit on a balcony, the city's lights humming below them. One leans back and murmurs, "Do you ever wonder if red looks the same to you as it does to me?" The other chuckles. Or if there are colors we'll never even know exist. The truth is, the colors we see are not the full story. They are the result of a compromise, a negotiation between light and biology. Your eyes have 3 types of cone cells, tuned to red, green, and blue. With them, your brain mixes shades into the spectrum you call sight. But this isn't a window into truth. It's a user interface, a limited one. Now consider the mantis shrimp, a creature no larger than your hand, but with a visual system that laughs at ours. It possesses up to 16 types of photoreceptors. To the shrimp, our rainbow is a grayscale sketch. What does a flower look like in mantis shrimp vision? What secrets shimmer in colors we'll never know? The reality we call color is not objective. It's a rendering, biology's best guess at the visual world. And here lies the glitch. If color is filtered, then so is perception. And if perception is filtered, then so is truth. We are not seeing the world as it is. We are seeing the world as we are built to see it. Think of a child with red-green color blindness trying to explain autumn leaves, or a dog whose world lacks the vibrant richness of human vision. Yet they live, love, react, and understand their surroundings, just not in our terms. Just like us, with the cosmic spectrum of color hidden beyond our reach. What if beyond violet and beneath red are messages, whole dimensions of visual truth, invisible not because they aren't real, but because we were never meant to see them? In infrared, a warm hand glows like a beacon. In ultraviolet, the patterns on a butterfly's wing explode into complexity, but your eye shrugs. It was never told to notice. A whisper of a deeper question rises. How much else are we missing? A person might sit beside you in a park, smiling gently as the leaves flutter overhead. It's beautiful, they say. And it is. But it's not complete. The beauty we recognize is just the sliver that survived translation, like reading a poem through fogged glass. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the world begins to blur, remember this. There are colors dancing around you that you'll never see. Real, radiant, and hidden. You are not wrong for missing them. You were simply never wired to witness everything. And yet, in that very limitation, is wonder. Close your eyes now. Because the next glitch isn't about what you see. It's about what you feel when time forgets to behave. The time that loops without you. A clock ticks softly in the background, but you're not listening to it anymore. You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange hush when time slips, when the seconds don't quite land where they should. You reach for your coffee, but realize you already finished it. You walk into a room, and for a flicker of a moment, something feels remembered. Not recalled, remembered. A man on a park bench looks at the woman beside him. Did we already have this conversation? He asks, not entirely joking. She smiles, tilts her head, and says, maybe. Or maybe we're just always here, saying this. Time is supposed to be linear, but it often isn't. Not inside us. Not inside the dream that keeps unfolding while you drift. Einstein once said that the separation between past, present, and future is only an illusion, albeit a convincing one. But illusions don't have to feel fake. They can feel warm, routine, structured, like always brushing your teeth before sleep, or waiting for the microwave to beep at exactly the same second each morning. But quantum physics, with its delicate whispers and paradoxical play, gently disagrees with what our calendars insist. It suggests a world where particles anticipate outcomes before causes, where the future nudges the past, and the moment you're in is stitched together from loops, not lines. Maybe that's why déjà vu wraps around you like a soft shawl at midnight. Maybe dreams are echoes from paths you haven't walked yet. Maybe that missed train last Tuesday wasn't a mistake, but a tiny skip in your own timeline. You are not traveling through time like a train on tracks. You are the station. Time passes through you. Every emotion you carry, grief, joy, hesitation, might just be how time feels as it brushes against your being. A girl sits on the floor beside her grandfather's old clock. She leans her head against its wooden side and whispers, "I swear I heard it skip a beat." Her brother shrugs. But later that night, when he lies in bed and hears that same rhythm stutter, he doesn't tell anyone. He just closes his eyes and lets it pass through him. In a world where everything moves, you may be the one stillness left, the eye of time's storm. So, If it ever feels like a moment is repeating itself, not once, not twice, but again and again, don't panic. It may not be a glitch. It might be time gently circling you, asking if you're ready to notice. Let it circle. Let it hum. Breathe here. And as your breath evens, we step now, not into time, but into dreams. Not the ones you remember, the ones that remember you. The dream. Inside the dream. It begins like any other morning. A flicker of light hits your eyelids. You sit up, stretch, and step onto the floor. Maybe even walk toward the kitchen or check your phone. Everything feels ordinary, entirely real, until it doesn't. The hallway seems to stretch farther than it ever has. A lamp that should glow flickers in unnatural silence, and somewhere deep inside your chest, a subtle alarm sounds, not of fear, but of knowing. You haven't really woken up. This is the experience of a false awakening, when the dream fabricates its own exit sign and your mind walks through it, thinking the dream has ended. But it hasn't. You're still caught inside the echo of sleep. Your brain, ever the artist of illusions, has layered one simulation inside another. The bed you woke up in? Constructed. The light filtering through the window? Simulated. The certainty of being awake? Fabricated. Hey, have you ever had that thing where you think you're awake but you're actually still dreaming? Yeah. The second voice answers with a quiet laugh. It's always the hallway for me. It stretches like it's trying to hide something. What do you do then? I stop walking, and I just wait. The dream usually folds in on itself. Nested dreams are more than just curious glitches. They're reminders of the fragility of our perceived reality. When you're inside one, everything feels real, but a part of you begins to suspect the truth, not because of logic, but because of intuition. That quiet voice that says, "This isn't it." And maybe, just maybe, that same voice whispers now, when you're wide awake, sipping coffee, scrolling your phone, asking, how do you know this isn't another layer? If your unconscious mind can simulate full awareness, complete with memories, sensory impressions, and emotions, then what makes this waking life any different? What if this moment, right now, is simply another construct? Vivid, convincing, but still not quite real. And here lies the haunting question. If your mind can trick itself into believing it's awake when it's not, how would you know when you truly are? Perhaps the concept of waking up isn't as absolute as we think. Perhaps it's not a switch flipped by the sunrise, but a spectrum, a series of veils gently lifted as we move closer to something deeper, more authentic. There are moments in dreams, just like in life, where we stop and question, not because the world looks wrong, but because we feel wrong in it, as if a part of us doesn't belong to the scene, as if something inside is watching, waiting, whispering, "Wake up." But maybe waking up isn't about opening your eyes. Maybe it's about listening to the part of you that never sleeps, the part that notices the hallway growing longer, the part that feels the ripple when reality stutters, the part that knows there's more. Let that part guide you now. Drift softly into that uncertainty, because the next reflection might not show your face. It might show something deeper, something closer to the real you, waiting quietly in the glass. The stranger in the mirror. Sometimes, when you stare at your own face for too long, something changes. The curve of the cheek softens into something unfamiliar. The symmetry begins to sway, and suddenly, the person in the mirror feels less like you, and more like someone watching you back. There's a term for this: the Troxler effect. a neurological ghost in the visual field. When you hold your gaze still long enough, your brain begins to blur out what doesn't move, like a painter growing tired of the details. The shadows shift, the colors mute, and what's left is a distortion, not just of face, but of familiarity. "Have you ever looked into your own eyes?" she asked, her voice low like someone unsure if the question was too private and not known who was looking back. He paused, not in confusion, but in quiet recognition. Yes, but it didn't feel frightening, just hollow, like I'd found a room in my mind I forgot I built. We like to think of our reflection as fixed, but that's the illusion. A mirror doesn't show truth, it shows agreement between what your brain expects and what your eyes allow. And when that agreement breaks, you meet the stranger. Not a ghost, not a demon, just the parts of you you've outgrown, ignored, or never dared name. This isn't just a visual trick, it's a whisper from your subconscious, a small glitch where the mind reveals you are not done becoming. Because identity isn't a solid thing, it's a rhythm, not a statue, but a flame. One moment you burn bright with confidence, the next you flicker with doubt. And perhaps that's the most honest version of you, something that moves, that learns, that contradicts itself. So if your reflection melts, don't panic. Maybe it's not breaking, maybe it's blooming, shedding yesterday's face so today can speak. "I think I saw myself for the first time," he said softly, rubbing his temples. "And I didn't look like I thought I would, but it felt honest, like I could breathe." The mirror, in this way, is not a surface. It's a threshold, one that quietly asks, "Are you ready to see without needing to recognize?" Because the deepest kind of seeing isn't through the eyes, but through acceptance, through letting go of what you should look like, should think like, should feel like. And in that surrender, the stranger becomes something tender, a version of you that simply waited to be invited in. So now, turn away from the glass. Let its edges blur into the background. Close your eyes. The next doorway is quieter. No reflections, no images. Just the weightless hush of real silence, where nothing is missing and everything is listening. The loudness of silence. Close your eyes. For a moment, let the world fall away. No voices, no machines, no music. Just quiet. But is it ever truly silent? Or do you begin to notice something else? The soft hiss behind your thoughts, the phantom hum nestled just beneath the stillness. What we call silence often reveals itself as a paradox, not the absence of sound, but the presence of something subtler, something shaped not by the world, but by you. It begins as a soft ring, like distant metal vibrating in the farthest room of your skull. Then comes a low-frequency hum, like a slow electrical current thrumming through your nervous system. You try to listen through it, to touch the real silence underneath, but you can't, because that deeper silence never arrives, not because it's absent, but because your mind refuses to let it be. "Hey," one voice asks in the dark, "do you hear that buzzing sound when everything else is quiet?" "Yeah," the other replies, "but I thought it was just me, like my ears making noise out of boredom." A pause. What if it's not noise at all, but my brain trying to make the silence bearable? Or maybe it's telling you what you've been ignoring. That's the heart of it. True silence is unsettling. The brain, always afraid of the void, rushes in with a placeholder, an illusion. It manufactures something familiar, sound-shaped memories, neural echoes, invented tone to cover the naked quiet. You don't hear the silence, you hear yourself, and in that self-generated sound, something deeper reveals itself. If your mind cannot endure silence without conjuring something to fill it, what else have you filled without noticing? What discomforts have you disguised with busyness, with noise, with mental chatter? What truths have you buried beneath a surface of static? Silence in this light becomes a mirror, a magnifying glass held to the places you thought were empty, only to find them brimming with suppressed thoughts, with grief unspoken, with hopes you've locked away. The more you sit with it, the more it pulses, not as peace, but as presence. Stillness isn't void. It's not a blank slate. It's a canvas where the hidden parts of you begin to paint themselves in whispers. And that quiet isn't always gentle. Sometimes, silence reveals the very thing you've been avoiding. The question you didn't want to ask. The wound that never fully closed. In this moment, what you call silence is actually the shape of what you've refused to name. I always thought I liked silence, one says again, but sometimes it feels too loud. That's because it's speaking in a language only your body remembers. The other replies softly. And for a long breath, they sit in it together, not escaping, not explaining, just allowing it to echo. So when the noise fades and your thoughts settle into the hush, don't rush to fill it. Listen deeper. Let the silence ring. Let it carry you, not into emptiness, but into awareness. The kind that doesn't need words, the kind that doesn't even need sound. Now, rest there, in this space that isn't silent, but sacred, because the next glitch you'll encounter isn't one you'll hear, it's one you'll feel, when knowing itself begins to unravel. The thought you never had. Close your eyes, let it drift in, the breeze that carries no name. A thought just landed, not because you summoned it, or built it, or longed for it. It simply appeared, uninvited, undeniably yours now. But is it really? They say a good idea feels like it has a return address, a clear path. But sometimes it feels more like a whisper that entered through the back door of your mind. No footsteps, no warning, just presence. In a quiet cafe, two friends sit beside a window fogged with sleep. One stares into her cup and says, "I don't know why I suddenly remembered that tree I used to climb as a kid." The other smiles faintly. Maybe it wasn't your memory's choice. Maybe the tree called you back. And with that, the conversation unravels something hidden in plain sight. We are not always the architects of our minds. Psychology has a name for these strangers: intrusive thoughts, sudden impulses, memories that barge in, like theater actors rushing on stage before you write the script. They're not always pleasant. Sometimes they're neutral, sometimes absurd. Sometimes they carry the weight of a lifetime in one blink. Science tells us your brain generates spontaneous cognition. Ideas formed not by will, but by pattern, chaos, or perhaps something deeper. A signal, not from outer space, but from within the space of your own inner cosmos. Have you ever paused and wondered, did I think this thought, or did it think me? And if that's possible, are you the one speaking inside your head, or just the listener to a broadcast from an unknown source? Thoughts come, thoughts go, and you might just be the riverbed they flow through. There's a strange comfort in this, like standing at the shore, realizing the waves will come regardless of your presence. You can observe, you can feel, but you don't have to believe everything the ocean brings to your feet. A man in a bookstore once mumbled to no one in particular, "I don't know why I picked this book, but something about the title felt like it already knew me." And perhaps that's how some thoughts arrive too, like forgotten letters finally finding their addressee. Not every thought is yours to own, and not every thought is yours to fear. They are visitors, messages in bottles. Some will float away without meaning. Some will anchor deep. So tonight, if a strange idea brushes against your mind as sleep draws near, don't chase it. Don't explain it. Let it settle like dusk on quiet water. Because maybe the self isn't the author of thought. Maybe it's the page it's written on. Let that thought pass now. Let it ripple. For in the next breath, we will listen closer, not to the voice, but to the one who hears. The listener that isn't you. There's a voice you've always known. It narrates your day, fills the quiet, questions your choices. Sometimes it's comforting, other times critical. But have you ever wondered, who is listening? Close your eyes and notice it now, that stream of internal speech, babbling softly like a radio left on in the corner of your mind. But just beyond that voice, behind it even, there's something else. A presence, a witness, silent, alert, and watching. Hey, someone once asked me in the middle of a quiet evening, do you ever hear your own voice talking in your head and realize you're not the one talking? I blinked, caught off guard. Wait, what do you mean? They smiled. Like, there's a you that speaks and a you that watches. Which one is real? That question stuck with me, because I'd always assumed they were one and the same. But in stillness, especially during meditation or those wordless moments before sleep, a strange separation occurs. The thinker, busy, emotional, analytical, continues to chatter. But deeper than that, a softer awareness sits and listens. Like a parent letting a child talk out loud to themselves. This listener never speaks. It never interrupts. It simply observes. And here's the strange part. Sometimes, the watcher feels more you than the voice ever did. The voice reacts. The watcher just is. You could be swept up in worry, fear, fantasy. Yet still, something remains untouched, quietly aware. What if that listener has always been there? Before your first memory, before you had language or a sense of self, what if that gentle witness already existed, just watching, waiting? It brings up a soft, unsettling question. If you're not the one speaking those thoughts, are you the one hearing them? Or is even that too much to grasp? Perhaps the self isn't a single layer, but a stack of mirrors reflecting each other in an infinite corridor. Voice echoes through one layer, then another, but the origin remains hidden in silence. There's no need to chase answers. This isn't a riddle to solve. It's an invitation to feel. Because the moment you stop trying to pin it down, the moment you just sit and notice, something clicks. There's a peaceful distance between you and your thoughts, and in that space, awareness blooms. Maybe that space is home. In the hush that follows, you begin to sense a new kind of listening, not the noisy voice, not the reactive mind, just presence, still and soft as dusk. Let the inner voice fade now, like fog retreating from a quiet field. Let the watcher remain. And as the mind drifts, untethered, prepare to step into something subtler. In the next segment, we leave behind even the voice and begin to float through the space between thoughts, where nothing is spoken and yet everything is known. The thought between thoughts. There is a moment, so small you almost miss it, between one thought and the next. A pause, a breath the mind takes without your permission. Not the thought, not the chatter, but the space between the noise. That space might be the most honest thing in you. Do you ever just Stop thinking mid-sentence and forget what you were even about to say? He asked while staring out the window, not expecting a real answer. She smiled, stirring her tea. Maybe that's the real sentence, the part you didn't say. And then they sat in silence, not awkwardly, but like two people sharing the same sky. We often mistake thinking for consciousness, as if the voice in our heads is the captain of the ship. But maybe it's more like the weather report, changeable, noisy, often wrong. Ancient monks used to describe the mind as a vast, open sky. Thoughts are the clouds, heavy, drifting, sometimes stormy. But the sky? The sky never leaves, even when you can't see it. Try to notice the next time your mind slows. The exact instant when one idea dissolves and the next hasn't yet arrived. That's where the watcher lives, the witness, the part of you that's always been here, quietly listening, before the arguments, before the plans, before the fear. Once, someone said they felt most alive, not when they were winning or creating, but when they sat at a red light, no music, no agenda, just the hum of the car and 1,000 small silences layered inside the engine. Like the universe was pausing with them. There's no technique here, no mantra, no mental trick to unlock the moment, because the moment doesn't hide, it just doesn't shout. Stillness, it turns out, isn't a reward for effort. It's what remains when effort drops away. And peace. Peace is not some distant prize. It's the floor that appears when all the furniture is moved out. It's the original shape of the room, before all the noise moved in. I think I lost my train of thought, he said with a sheepish grin. She leaned her head on the back of the chair. Maybe that's the station you were meant to stop at. A breeze touched the window just then, and neither of them said anything else. If consciousness is a song, then the rests are as important as the notes. You are not only the melody, you are the silent understanding between the words. So let yourself slip into that gap now, not as something broken, but as something whole, thoughtless, timeless. You don't have to chase quiet. You only have to stop interrupting it. And if, somewhere along the way, your mind drifts off, that's okay too. This was never about answers, only presence. In the next segment, we'll turn gently toward the glitch of repetition, the unseen loops that keep rewriting your reality. But for now, stay here, in the space between. The loop you call life. There's a moment, quiet, late, somewhere between your second yawn and the third time you've checked your phone, when the question gently knocks. Why does this keep happening to me? You're not alone in wondering. That sense of déjà vu you carry from mistake to mistake isn't an accident. It's not some mystical punishment or cosmic oversight. It's a pattern, a loop. And somewhere, your brain, like a film projector stuck on replay, is running the same reel over and over. You might say, "No, I've changed. And yes, you've grown taller, perhaps more cautious. But why does love still hurt the same way? Why do you attract the same chaos wearing different faces? Why does regret visit like an old friend who never knocks?" "It's because I'm cursed," someone whispers. "No," the other replies. "It's because it's what you know." The brain, brilliant and bound, is a prediction machine. It doesn't choose what's best. It chooses what's familiar. Safety, in its most primal sense, is pattern recognition. If you survived yesterday's chaos, the mind thinks repeating it today increases your chances again, even if it scars you. So, the loop forms. One decision becomes a default. One heartbreak becomes a blueprint. One regret becomes a roadmap for how you treat yourself. You might remember the same fight you've had in 3 different relationships, or the way you always abandon your goals right when they begin to feel possible, or how every time someone gets close, you instinctively push them away, gently, almost kindly, just enough to keep the ache alive, but manageable. The loop doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hums beneath the surface, routine disguising itself as destiny. Why do I always ruin good things? Maybe because you were taught that good things aren't meant to last. When trauma goes unhealed, it becomes architecture, and like a house built with invisible cracks, we walk its halls thinking it's shelter, not knowing it was never designed for peace. Desire, too, can deceive. You chase what excites you, but if your compass was shaped by pain, you might be pulled toward what's sharp rather than what's soft. And then there's habit, the invisible ink on the script you keep acting out. You wake, scroll, react, overthink, sleep. You tell yourself this is life. But is it? Or is it just what you've accepted? What would happen if you stopped mid-scene? If you dropped the role? Not with drama or resistance, but with stillness. What if you stepped off the carousel and asked, who wrote this? Maybe it's not fate. Maybe it's muscle memory. Maybe healing isn't a miracle. It's just the hard work of choosing something unfamiliar, of saying, today I won't flinch from kindness. Today I won't flee from stillness. Today I'll rewrite one sentence in the story I've been handed. The loop isn't your enemy. It's your map. It shows you exactly where you need to turn. Not by force, but by invitation. As the night deepens and your breath softens, let that idea settle quietly. You are not the loop. You are the one watching it. And watching is the first step to waking. Now that you've seen the pattern, what if it was never your life in the first place? What if you are the dream and someone else is dreaming you? The dreamer who isn't you. There's a hush in the air tonight, not silence, but something gentler, a kind of soft murmur from a deeper place. You may not have words for it, but you've felt it before. That odd sensation when everything you thought was you begins to feel like scenery, like the stage was already set long before you arrived. Across a darkened street, someone sits at a window lit only by their own reflection. Sometimes, they whisper, as if to no one, I feel like I'm not the one dreaming. I'm the one being dreamed. The idea isn't new. The ancient Vedantic seers once said, this life is not yours, but of you. A dream moving through awareness, shaped by stories you didn't author. And strangely, scientists today, with simulation theory and quantum cognition, echo that same haunting thought. You may be a ripple in something vaster, a character formed by memory loops and sensory echoes inside a consciousness that isn't local to your skull. Think about that. The panic you felt last Tuesday, the scent that pulled you back to childhood, the time you laughed too loud in a quiet cafe. What if none of those were decisions, but flickers in a dreaming mind? You are the shape it takes when it remembers longing, the rhythm it sings when it tries to recall joy, and the fear you feel when you lose control is just the dream tightening because it forgot it's dreaming. Hey, someone says beside you at the bus stop, eyes still on their phone. Do you ever feel like your life isn't really yours? Like you're just playing along? You nod, unsure if they meant to speak that aloud. The street lamp buzzes, and neither of you says another word. If you're being dreamed, then your role is not to win the dream. It's to feel it. Like a leaf in the current, your beauty is not in resisting the flow, but in how fully you move with it. You don't need to steer the river. Just notice the way it ripples under moonlight. And here's the strange mercy. If you're not the dreamer, you can stop holding so tightly. You can unclench. You can stop building fortresses around who you think you are. Let yourself be music, not the musician. A hush, not the mouth that speaks it. A lull drapes over the thoughts now. You may drift, or you may stay. Either is fine. The dream doesn't need your effort. It only wants your presence. The more you try to shape it, the less it breathes. But when you listen, truly listen, it hums a little closer to peace. In the end, maybe that's the only real freedom. Not to escape the dream, but to walk softly through it. To know the difference between waking and waking up. And as we slide gently into the next idea, let's leave behind even this question of identity. Because what comes next may ask something stranger. What if there is no outside to dream of at all? The world was inside you all along. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you still feel the room around you? The air brushing your skin? The hum of unseen electricity beneath the silence? It's strange, isn't it? How everything continues to exist in your awareness, even without your eyes to confirm it. But what if none of it is out there in the way you think? What if the world, the entire orchestra of colors, shapes, textures, and sounds, isn't something you perceive, but something you create? A whisper of light touches the retina, but it doesn't bring a picture with it. It brings data, waves, frequencies. Your brain takes that and paints a scene. Not just any scene, but one layered with memory, context, language, and meaning. The green of a tree, the edge of a table, the warmth in a loved one's face. All that is rendered not by the world, but by your mind. There is no tree out there in the way you see it. The tree, as you know it, blooms only in your skull. Two friends sit on a bench beneath the evening sky. You ever wonder if we're really seeing the same thing? One asks, staring at the golden clouds. Like, if my red is your red? The other chuckles. No, deeper. The first replies, like maybe I'm not seeing the sky at all. Maybe I'm just seeing a version of it my brain made up. The second friend falls silent. So, it's not the world we're in, it's the world we're projecting? A nod. Exactly. Maybe we're not inside the world. Maybe the world is inside us. That notion lingers like a breath you forgot to exhale. If all experience is internal, then where exactly do you end and the world begin? The borders blur. What you call reality might be nothing more than a brilliant, consensual hallucination, a simulation so convincing, so automatic that you never thought to question its source. It's not a trick. It's a design. The human brain isn't a passive recorder. It's an artist, a tireless interpreter. It takes light and turns it into memory. It takes sound and weaves it into story. Your consciousness does not wait for the world to inform it. It constructs the world as you move through it. And here lies the quiet revelation. If the entire world is built inside you, then so is every fear, every dream, every echo of the past. You are not just walking through life. Life is walking through you. Every corner of perception folds inward. Every landscape lives within your frame of awareness. You are the container. So then, if the world is in you, what else might be hiding in there? That question hums like a low frequency in the stillness, inviting you into the next chamber of your mind. Where perception ends, presence begins. Let go of the image. In the next segment, we meet something that's been there all along, quietly watching, gently waiting, even while you sleep. The self that watches while you sleep. At some point in the night, thought loosens its grip. Words slip through the fingers of your mind, concepts blur, and yet your chest still rises. Your heart continues its quiet rhythm, unbothered by the dramas of daylight. The mind may vanish into sleep, but not everything does. In this space between surrender and survival, something remains. Not thinking, not planning, just being. No urgency, no ambition, just the low hum of life, pulsing softly in the background. You don't have to do anything for your body to breathe, for your cells to repair, for your spirit to stay tethered. It simply happens, like the tide returning to shore without asking permission. One night, after a long shift, two strangers sat next to each other on the last train. One leaned back, eyes fluttering. The other asked gently, "Tired?" A nod. "You can rest. I'll wake you before your stop." No explanation, no reason needed. Just presence, just watching. Sometimes that's all we long for, someone or something that watches over us, even when we disappear. This is where many ancient traditions softly point, not to the thoughts that swirl, not to the story you tell yourself in the mirror, but to the witness behind the mirror, the self beneath the self, the silent observer who never sleeps, never speaks, only sees. And it's not a seeing with eyes, but a kind of sensing beyond language, the one that knows you're afraid before you do, that holds your hand even when you can't feel it. But here's the twist. What if this presence isn't just in you, but is you? Not the name, not the personality, something older, simpler, like the warmth in sunlight before it becomes a shadow on the wall. A barista once smiled at a customer too tired to speak. "It's okay," she said gently, handing over the drink. "You don't have to explain. I've had those days too." That kindness, unasked, unearned, feels familiar to this silent self. The part of you that doesn't need to impress, defend, or prove. It just is. And in the stillness of sleep, when the performer steps off stage, that self remains in the audience, eyes soft, waiting. Psychologists call it awareness without content. Philosophers call it pure consciousness. Poets call it soul. But it doesn't care what name you give it. It only waits for you to notice. You may never fully see it. You may only sense it at the edges of your dreams, in the half second before waking, or when something startles you into stillness. And for a moment, you become aware of awareness itself. It isn't loud, it isn't clever, but it's patient. And if it has been watching all this time, through joy, through shame, through silence, then maybe you were never alone. Maybe you were always being held by something soft and vast and unseen. So now, let yourself fall, not into sleep, but into trust. The breath will continue. The watcher will remain. And when you return, we'll listen together to what the silence has kept in your absence. The silence that remembers. Close your eyes, not to sleep just yet, but to listen, not for voices, not for thoughts, but for what remains when all of that fades. A kind of hush that isn't empty at all, but full of something ancient, like a cathedral remembering prayers whispered centuries ago. What if silence doesn't forget? What if instead it remembers, not in sentences or images, but in sensation, in being? "You ever sit in a quiet room," she asked, "and feel like something's there, even if nothing moves?" He looked at her, puzzled. "You mean like a presence?" "No," she whispered. "Like a memory that never got spoken." There's a hum beneath the world, not heard through ears but felt in the skin, in the spaces between your ribs. A tone too low to register, but real. The ancients didn't think of silence as absence. To them, it was the beginning, the source, the soil where sound was seeded. Silence was the original breath, the one before the first word ever fractured time. And even now, when everything stills, it's as if that first breath still hovers, waiting to be remembered. Each time you pause, each breath you let stretch a little longer, something returns, a faint warmth, a forgotten feeling. The body recalls what the mind has long discarded, that awkward moment in childhood when you felt seen for the first time, the way a loved one's absence still leaves a shape in the room. And all of this returns, not through memory, but through silence. It is in the silence that the invisible becomes audible to the soul. I don't remember much of that day, he admitted. You don't have to, she said. The silence between your words already did. Stillness isn't passive. It holds. It cradles. The way a dark sky holds stars without swallowing their light. The way a mother listens to her child's breathing in sleep, quiet but aware. We've been taught to fear silence, to fill it, to drown it in music, chatter, even noise. But silence isn't the enemy. It's the archive, the keeper of things too sacred for speech, the space where what was never said still lives. So tonight, as the world softens around you, let yourself fall into that hush, into the space that doesn't demand, doesn't explain, doesn't judge. There, you are more than your name, more than your mistakes. You are the remembered presence, the soul's echo. And maybe, just maybe, this silence is the place where your truest self waits, not to be found, but simply to be. And as you rest deeper, guided by this unseen resonance, the next thought arrives, not loud, but shadowed. A flicker from long ago, the younger you, casting a shape onto the walls of this very stillness. Let's follow them. The ghost of who you were. There's a quiet sound that follows you, even when you think you've outgrown it. A hesitation before a choice, a pattern you repeat without meaning to, like a scent that clings to a sweater long after it's been washed. That's the ghost of who you were, still whispering beneath who you think you've become. Science tells us your body isn't the same one you had 7 years ago. Cells regenerate, skin replaces, neural pathways reroute. Your taste in music evolves. You even forget things you once thought you'd never live without. So, who exactly are you continuing from? Late one evening, 2 people sit in a laundromat, one flipping through a magazine, the other staring blankly at the dryer tumbling. The first says softly, "Ever feel like you're still being punished for a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore?" The second doesn't answer immediately. Then, almost without looking up, "Sometimes I think I owe that version an apology, or maybe just a goodbye." You're layered like sediment, each year pressing a new version down upon the last. Yet none of them vanish entirely. Some pieces resurface in odd ways. An old fear when you pass a certain street, a reflex to hide your joy, even though no one now asks you to. These are echoes, not errors, but they do blur your reflection. And that blur, that's what confuses us. You may act from a place you've outgrown, love in a way you no longer understand, or react to situations that don't exist anymore. Is that a flaw? Or just proof that the self isn't a fixed object, but a flowing river, shifting through time? There's a term in cognitive science, autobiographical memory distortion. It means your past isn't stored like a file. It's rewritten each time you recall it. Which version of your childhood is truest? The one you remembered last year, or the one you remembered 5 years ago? And if both are different, which one shaped who you are today? Perhaps the self isn't a noun at all. Maybe it's a verb, a becoming, something always underway but never final. You are not a single book, but a library of drafts, annotated, corrected, half erased, written in margins and ink stains and fingertips you no longer recognize. Think of an old voicemail you've kept, not because it says something important, but because of the voice, the rhythm, the you who needed to save it. That past version is no longer here, but they left something behind. And maybe what matters isn't who you were, but how gently you carry their ghost. One night, as a person reaches for a glass of water in the dark, they pause, just before the light switch. Something about the shadow in the room feels like déjà vu. Not threatening, just known. And they whisper to no one in particular, "Still here, huh?" The silence responds like an exhale, letting them pass. You don't need to fix those echoes. You just need to listen kindly, because becoming doesn't mean discarding. It means allowing, letting old shapes dissolve while new ones form without forcing closure. So as you settle now, under your own weight, in your own warmth, know that it's okay to feel haunted sometimes. Ghosts aren't always there to scare you. Sometimes they're just making sure you remember how far you've come. Now, let them float. Let those older selves release their grip, not out of denial, but out of gratitude. In the stillness that follows, we ask a new question. If you could see yourself, not through memory, but through someone else's eyes, what would you discover? The next segment begins there. Let it arrive like a soft voice at the edge of a dream. Close your eyes. You're safe to drift. The stranger. They think you are. There's a soft disquiet in realizing that no one truly knows who you are, not because they don't care, but because they can't. Every interaction, every glance, every silence you've shared becomes a thread in the tapestry they weave of you. And yet, none of those threads were stitched by your own hand. They only see versions, glimpses distorted by their hopes, fears, and memories. You become a story they write without asking for your input. Two friends sit beneath a soft porch light, night stretching endlessly behind them. Do you ever wonder who you are to other people? One asks quietly, gazing at nothing. The other chuckles. All the time. I think I'm a completely different person in every mind I've ever walked through. So which one is the real you? A pause, then a whisper. Maybe none of them. This isn't a flaw of the mind. It's the architecture of perception. We all carry filters made of memory, emotion, and bias. When someone meets you, they don't see your past, your self-doubt, your quiet victories. They see what their lens allows. You become their teacher, their enemy, their background character, whatever suits the narrative they need. And like shadows at dusk, these versions stretch far beyond your reach. It's not just strangers. Even those closest to you, parents, partners, old friends, they each cradle their own private rendering of you. The you who was kind, the you who disappointed them, the you they never confronted. It's humbling, maybe even haunting, to think that at any given moment, you're walking through the minds of dozens, perhaps hundreds, as a stranger wearing your name. But here's the twist. You do the same. Think of someone from your past, a teacher, a lover, someone who changed you. You don't remember them as they were. You remember how they made you feel. You carry their imprint, not their essence. And in doing so, you too have made a stranger out of someone once real. A boy once told his sister, "I don't think anyone truly knows me." She smiled and replied, That's okay. You're not one story. You're a constellation. But what if the stars don't connect the way I think they do? Then let them. That's the beauty. You're still glowing, even in the versions you didn't write. If every person you've touched has sculpted a different sculpture of you, then what does that make your identity? Not a singular, solid thing, but a mosaic of fractured reflections, shaped by eyes that never see the same. In that sense, you are everyone's, and yet no one's, 1,000 strangers, stitched into a single skin. And still, that doesn't make you any less real. The truth is, identity isn't a fortress. It's fog. It moves. It adapts. And perhaps that's not a weakness, but a gift. You are not bound by one script. You are a symphony of misunderstandings, of kindness misread as coldness, of silence mistaken for depth. And through all of it, something still breathes underneath, something only you can feel. So rest with this knowing. You may never fully own how others see you, but you can still inhabit your quiet truth. Not the loudest version, not the most loved, but the one that remains when no one is looking. And now, let's gently pull back even from that illusion. Because beyond the roles, beyond the fragments, there lies a space where all selves vanish, where the performance ends and only being remains. Let's go there. Next. The point where you vanish. There's a place you reach, not by running faster, but by forgetting you were running at all. A space where your name doesn't echo, where your inner voice finally lets go of its grip. In that moment, you're not trying to be anything, because you're not anything at all. You're just there. It might happen in the hush between two notes of a song, in the glide of a paintbrush across canvas, or in that exact breath between inhale and exhale when you're watching the sky shift through your window. The clock is still ticking, but somehow, you've stopped. A woman once described it like this: I was dancing in my kitchen. No one was watching. I wasn't even watching. It was just the rhythm moving through me, and I didn't think. I didn't need to. It's what scientists call flow. It's what monks whisper about in deep meditation. It's what children do so easily when they play until dusk and forget to be self-conscious. And oddly, these are the moments when we feel most here. Not because we are thinking about ourselves, but precisely because we've stopped doing so. Do you think we vanish in those moments? Someone once asked over coffee, tracing the rim of her cup as if trying to define the edge of her own presence. Her friend smiled, pausing just long enough to feel the warmth in her palms. Maybe we vanish into the truth, she replied. The paradox is this: when you dissolve, you come alive. You're not performing. You're not reflecting. You're not even aware of being aware. You're just immersed, fully. And it doesn't feel like losing yourself. It feels like returning. The self in these moments becomes like steam rising from a hot mug on a cold morning. Fleeting, unnecessary, beautiful, yes, but not essential to the warmth within. And if your best moments are the ones when you forget yourself, what does that say about the self you've been trying so hard to maintain? Perhaps it's a costume stitched from memory, fear, and desire. Perhaps presence is what happens when you take it off. That presence doesn't need a mirror. It doesn't ask for validation. It doesn't beg to be remembered. It just is. As a child playing alone in a garden might be, lost in digging little rivers through the mud, whispering stories to ants, never once pausing to wonder, what does this say about me? And yet, if you asked that child afterward, they might say, that was the happiest I've ever felt. You vanish, and in vanishing, you feel whole. This is the strange magic of being human, that the more tightly we hold onto identity, the more fragmented we become. But when we loosen our grip, when we allow ourselves to dissolve into music, movement, wonder, something honest opens, something ancient. So if there is a lesson here, it may be this: you don't always need to be someone. Sometimes you just need to be here. And maybe you don't need to search for yourself in words, goals, or mirrors. Maybe you need to lose yourself in the wind, the waves, the quiet. And if that sounds frightening, let it be. But also, let it be gentle, because vanishing isn't disappearing. It's unfolding. A breath, a moment, a soft returning to a world without edges. Now that you've vanished, the next question floats in. Who or what brings you back? The next voice is already on its way. Stay with it, or drift if you must. Both are welcome here. The voice that calls you back. Somewhere between the hush of midnight and the first breath of sleep, there's a voice. Not loud, not forceful, but quietly familiar. It doesn't shout or explain. It simply reminds. Maybe it's not even a voice, not in the traditional sense. Sometimes it arrives as a feeling that brushes your chest, as if a soft string were tugging from somewhere just behind your ribs. Other times, it sounds like your childhood laughter echoing down a hallway you've long forgotten, a whisper of a version of you that never quite left. Do you ever get that feeling? She asks as they lie beneath the dim warmth of a ceiling fan. Like you're supposed to be someone else? Or maybe you used to be? He turns slowly, thoughtful. Not someone else, exactly. But yeah, like there was a part of me I dropped somewhere along the way. And sometimes it calls out, like it wants to be found. That's the essence of it. We spend so much of our lives drifting between tasks, expectations, obligations. One moment you're 15, daydreaming under a tree. The next you're 40, staring into your phone, wondering why everything feels so off, even when nothing is technically wrong. And yet, in the middle of that dissonance, something still reaches for you. It might be the scent of rain on old pavement, or the sound of a song you didn't know you remembered. That's the voice. Subtle, stubborn, a tether through the noise. It might feel like conscience, a gentle nudge when you're about to take a step too far from who you meant to be. Or intuition, the sudden clarity that arrives with no logic, just trust. Or maybe it's guidance, something deeper, not from you, but to you. A whisper from the version of yourself that stayed behind, not the self you project, not the one that performs, but the one that simply is, the one who remembers. And if that voice calls, if it even dares to reach through the fog, then maybe you were never as lost as you feared. Maybe wandering isn't the same as being adrift. Perhaps the path isn't straight because it isn't meant to be. Maybe the detours are where your soul learns to listen. He leans in, voice hushed. You think we ever really lose ourselves? She smiles, eyes half closed. Number, I think we just forget to answer back. Let that land. Let it rest. Because even as you drift, even as you dissolve into the calm of your breath, that quiet presence waits. Not to correct you, not to scold, but to remind you, you are still in there, beneath the layers of stories, failures, reinventions. There remains a self untouched, and the voice that calls you back doesn't demand your return. It simply welcomes it. So if you hear something tonight, a feeling, a memory, a nudge, it's okay to follow it. Not to arrive somewhere, but to return, quietly, gently, to yourself. And once you've heard it, once you've let it settle, prepare. because in the space that follows, we go deeper still into the unsettling possibility that even your thoughts are not yours alone. Let's drift there, together. The thought that wasn't yours. It arrives unannounced like a breeze through a half-open window. You're brushing your teeth, reaching for your keys, staring at the ceiling when it slips in. A thought that doesn't belong to the rhythm of your usual inner chatter. It doesn't sound like your voice, it doesn't follow your logic, and yet, there it is. Sharp, strange, haunting in its clarity. It hovers for a second, then dissolves, leaving behind the faintest echo. Was that mine? Some say consciousness is not the origin of thoughts, but the witness, that the mind isn't a factory but a frequency, a receiver, picking up transmissions from somewhere else, somewhere you can't name. Two people sit on a quiet train, their shoulders barely brushing. One turns to the other and says, "Do you ever think something weird, like it came from outside you?" The other laughs softly and replies, "All the time. I call them mind hitchhikers." Science skirts the idea gently. Split brain studies, dream cognition, automatic writing, thoughts that emerge during sleep, or as you're waking, full of information you never studied, in languages you never learned. The brain hums with activity, but where does that signal begin? Is it cellular? Is it spiritual? Is it shared? There's a moment in the stillness before dreams when an idea blossoms whole in your mind. You didn't build it. You didn't reach for it. It simply unfolded, complete, like something sent or remembered. The sensation feels less like inventing and more like tuning in. A voice on a podcast once said, "We are not our thoughts, we are the sky they pass through." And maybe there's truth in that. Thoughts move like clouds. Some form slowly. Others arrive fully shaped, casting shadows on your awareness. You may think they're yours, but are they? If the mind can receive what it hasn't authored, then perhaps your identity is more porous than you imagined. You're not a sealed container. You're a threshold, and thresholds invite travelers. Someone once told me, "I wrote a poem in my sleep. I woke up crying, but I don't remember writing it." That's the mystery. The lines between you and not you blur, between creation and reception, between memory and message. So what happens if you stop identifying with every thought that arises? If you let them come and go, like visitors in a quiet home, some welcome, some strange, all temporary? Another late-night conversation plays in the corner of your memory. Someone at a coffee shop asked, "Do you think we're dreaming someone else's dream?" And for a moment, you weren't sure how to answer. Because some questions don't seek answers. They seek resonance. They press gently on the walls of your certainty and ask, what if it's wider than you think? If consciousness is a sky, then thought is weather. You are not every storm that rolls through. You are not every whisper of wind, but you feel them. You carry their chill, their weight, their wonder. So let the next thought come. Let it be unfamiliar. Let it slip past your filters. Don't hold it too tightly. Let it pass. Let it teach. And now, rest in that soft ambiguity. Because in the next segment, we loosen even more. The grip of time. What if you're not just receiving thoughts, but being dreamed by time itself? Close your eyes. There's a signal waiting. The effect that creates its cause. A slow breath, a pause, and then a question that doesn't ask for an answer, only presence. What if the future is already whispering to the past? Not loudly, not with commands, but gently, like a ripple returning to its source. She leaned back against the park bench, her eyes watching the pond ripple in concentric rings. "It's strange," she murmured. "I feel like I made that decision last year because of something I haven't done yet." He smiled, as if her confusion had a name. "Maybe that's not backward. Maybe you're just listening to the version of you who already knows how it ends." In the realm of quantum mechanics, reality plays with these thoughts like light through a prism. Delayed choice experiments, they sound like riddles, but they hold a trembling truth. A particle moves, but it doesn't decide what it is until after we've looked. The act of observing, of noticing, retroactively rewrites what it was. Cause bends, effect leads. It's like a play where the curtain closes first, and only then do the actors walk on stage. You thought you'd been watching the story unfold, but the ending was already printed onto the beginning. And so we must ask, softly, with wonder, not fear, if that's possible in the human mind too. If your body turned left instead of right today, was it because of something buried in childhood? Or because of someone you haven't yet met? A conversation that hasn't happened yet, but already echoes in your steps? I only went to that cafe because the power went out. And yet, that's where you met the one who would change everything. She laughed, almost nervously. So was it fate or a glitch? Maybe it's neither, he whispered. Maybe it's your future self, reaching back through the cracks. When we dream of ourselves years ahead, we often picture versions molded by the past. But what if it flows in both directions? Perhaps we are sculpted by gravity pulling us forward, not backward. Maybe it's not memory that makes you, but intention. Not trauma, but longing. If your actions now ripple outward into tomorrow, then your dreams ripple back into now, guiding, shaping, quietly haunting the choices you thought were yours. A hand rests on the door handle, not knowing why it lingers, not knowing that 3 weeks from now, you'll be grateful you hesitated. That pause, small and silent, was a thread from the future, tugging gently. You are not just the echo of what's been done. You are the hum of what is still unfolding. As the night deepens, let this thought settle in the folds of your mind like warm silk. You are being remembered by a future you haven't yet lived. And perhaps that's not so strange. Perhaps that's not unnatural. Perhaps that's the design. The future doesn't wait. It listens. And when you're quiet enough, it speaks. Noun. Let that ripple stretch, widen, dissolve. In the next segment, we'll step into an even stranger truth. The identity you carry may not belong to just one version of you, but to many, scattered across time. Let yourself drift there. We'll meet you on the other side. The you that time forgot. Close your eyes. Not to sleep just yet, but to remember. Not a memory of something you did, but of someone you were. 10 years ago, maybe. Or last month. Or even just yesterday. That version of you had different thoughts, different hopes, maybe a softer heart or a sharper edge. But are they still here? Are you still them? Time, it seems, is a sculptor. Not one with gentle hands, but one who chisels away without permission. You don't always notice the change until something jolts you into realizing it. An old photo, a familiar smell, the sound of your voice from years ago on a recording, and suddenly you're staring at a ghost, an echo of yourself you didn't realize was gone. Biologically, science confirms this quiet erosion. Most of your body's cells regenerate over time. Your skin is new every few weeks. Your gut, your lungs, even your bones, rebuilt molecule by molecule. Neurons may remain, but the patterns, the connections between them, always shifting, always rewiring. The The self, it turns out, is not a statue carved once and forever. It's more like a sand mandala, lovingly built, gently blown away, and rebuilt again. And yet, the world treats you as if you're the same. Your name, your ID, your social security number, all fixed, permanent. But beneath the surface, 1,000 versions of you lie buried like layers of sediment. Which one is real? Do you ever feel like you're watching your life from the outside? One voice asks in the dark. All the time, another replies, soft and unsure. Sometimes I remember things I felt so deeply, and now they feel like they happened to someone else. Maybe they did. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's thoughtful, reflective, almost reverent. If continuity is an illusion, then identity might be too. Maybe the self isn't a single unbroken thread, but a story you keep telling yourself, a narrative stitched from memory, shaped by desire, held together by habit. And like any story, it can be revised. This isn't frightening. It's freeing. You are not trapped in the version of you that made those mistakes, that carried that shame, that hesitated out of fear. If that self is gone, cell by cell, thought by thought, then you are free to choose again, to become again. You are not a fixed point on a line. You are the line itself, in motion, in revision. So tonight, as your breathing slows and the weight of sleep begins to draw you inward, consider this. The you that time forgot may not be gone, just dissolved, absorbed into the present like light into water. And if you are always changing, always regenerating, then maybe the most honest thing you can say is, I am becoming. Let that thought cradle you. Let the old selves fade like pages gently turned by time. Because next, we'll step into a quieter glitch. The possibility that the world is not just around you, but reflecting something deep within you. A mirror, not of skin, but of soul. The mirror that thinks. It begins quietly, a subtle awareness, as if the air around you knows you're there. Not in a supernatural way, not in the loud, mythic sense, but something softer, like the warmth of a room after someone's just left it. You feel observed, but not judged. A presence, not a watcher. She turned to him and asked, Do you ever get the feeling that the world notices you noticing it? He laughed gently, not mocking, but puzzled. You mean like when you stare at the ocean too long and it stares back? Exactly, she whispered. Panpsychism, a word that doesn't raise its voice. It simply suggests. What if everything has some sliver of awareness? Not just the neurons in your head, but the stone beneath your feet, the cloud over your street, the device in your hand. Not that they think as you do, not with language or logic, but with presence, with a kind of silent knowing. A tree may not debate ethics, but it responds to light. A star may not weep, but it burns without forgetting. So when you lean into the world, when your gaze lingers on the moon or your hand rests on the fabric of a chair, perhaps you're not the only one present in that moment. Perhaps it leans back. And what if that lean is not passive? What if your thoughts don't just arise within you, but ripple outward? What if your grief slightly reshapes the path of a breeze? What if your joy tints the color of morning for someone you'll never meet? He looked up at the night sky and said softly, Sometimes I wonder if the stars wait for us to look. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence between them held more awareness than any reply. In a world where matter may think, the boundaries between mind and material blur. The keyboard is no longer just a tool. The walls of your room are no longer just shelter. Everything becomes participatory, alive not in heartbeat, but in harmony. It softens the idea of solitude. You're no longer alone with your thoughts. You're part of a symphony, quiet, scattered, but undeniably connected. The thought you just had might echo in the atoms of a window pane, or hum along the frequency of a cloud. It also changes responsibility. If every moment is co-created, if the world reflects thought as much as it reflects light, then perhaps your attention carries more power than you know. Your focus sculpts reality. Your inner monologue becomes a kind of architecture. Even doubt is part of the design. To question if the world is aware is itself an awareness the world receives. So tonight, as you lie there, still, weight sinking gently into your bed, let that awareness cradle you. You are not an isolated spark flickering in the dark. You are a flame mirrored in many places. And if you feel seen, without reason, without cause, perhaps it's because the world does, in fact, see. The next segment will take you deeper still, into something timeless, a place where this life may not be your only story, and the first breath you took may not have been your first hello. Sleep if you must. You can always return. The mirror will still be here, thinking with you. The memory of a life you haven't lived. There's a quiet pull sometimes. You walk down a street in a foreign country, and it feels like home. You touch an artifact in a museum, and something in your chest aches, though you've never seen it before. You meet someone, a stranger, and feel a warmth so familiar it terrifies you. These moments don't ask for explanation. They simply are, lingering like the scent of a forgotten dream. Have you ever felt homesick for a place you've never seen? She asks softly, her head resting against the train window, watching hills blur into dusk. He pauses, then nods. Sometimes I miss things I don't understand, like there's something I left behind before I was born. Me too, she whispers, as if admitting a secret the universe might overhear. Some call it reincarnation, the soul recycling through bodies like pages in a novel, each life building on echoes of the last. Others whisper of genetic memory, trauma etched into DNA, and passed like haunted heirlooms from ancestor to descendant. Then, there are those who believe the veil between timelines is thin, and sometimes the threads bleed through. You remember something not because it happened to you, but because it happened to someone whose shadow you still carry. It isn't always clear. The memory comes as an image, a sound, a grief you can't place, a melody that moves you to tears though you've never heard it, a farewell in a dream that breaks your heart though no one has left. These impressions aren't logical, but they're undeniable. Emotion, untethered from experience, still carves deep truths. If memories can rise uninvited, unearned even, then maybe you're not just the product of this life, this name, this body. Maybe you're a living tapestry, a story stitched together from countless other tales, each life a thread, some vibrant, some faded, crossing over in strange patterns. Some threads may never have touched, and yet you carry the sensation that they did. And if that's true, what is identity but a collage, a soft layering of truths and half-truths stitched by time and perception? Maybe that's why nostalgia haunts even the young. Maybe that's why some fears arrive without cause. Maybe you weren't meant to remember everything, but the feeling was too strong to stay buried. Do you think I've lived before? He asks her, voice almost lost beneath the hum of the train. She closes her eyes. I think parts of you have, and they're still trying to find home. So breathe gently when those phantom memories rise. Don't rush to dismiss them as fantasy. Perhaps they're not errors in your mind, but invitations, signs that your existence is broader than this one brief moment in time. A quiet reminder that even the present is stitched with the weight of unspoken yesterdays. Let the tapestry ripple now. Let it stretch beyond logic. Because what if the reason those memories feel real is because in some deeper dimension they are? And with that thought, soften your breath. In the next moment, we ask, what if the world around you only exists when you notice it? What if attention isn't passive, but the thread that weaves reality itself? The world that vanishes when you look away. The street lamp flickers once, just once, and you wonder, was it always broken, or did your glance break it? Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's everything, a whisper from the edge of things. In the delicate silence between two blinks, the world rearranges itself, not dramatically, no grand gestures, just a subtle reshuffling. The chair is still there, the walls haven't moved, and yet, something feels different. The air presses against your skin in a slightly unfamiliar way, like the room has just remembered you're here. Do you think things exist when we're not watching? Someone asks, their voice half draped in sleep. Another responds, barely audible, like they're answering a question from within a dream. Maybe they wait, like actors behind a curtain. Still, ready? Physics, at its softest whisper, agrees. Quantum theory suggests that until something is observed, it isn't real in the way we think. Particles hover in uncertainty. Potential. Like all of existence is holding its breath until your attention gives it shape. You don't have to be a scientist to feel this. You've walked into rooms that felt startled to see you. You've thought of someone just before they called. And you've had those moments where it feels like the world has paused, just a beat, waiting for your decision before continuing the scene. It's subtle, like a song that only plays when you listen for it. A dream that doesn't begin until your eyes open inside it. And what does this mean, really? If the act of looking crystallizes the world, then your gaze is not passive. It's creative. You're not just witnessing reality, you're helping to construct it. She stares at the ocean, not for any reason, just because it's there. He walks up beside her and says, "What are you looking at?" She answers without turning, "I think I'm holding it in place." He chuckles softly, then stares too. Neither of them moves, and the ocean doesn't disappear. Of course, this doesn't mean we're gods, but it might mean that consciousness is woven into the loom of the universe itself. That presence, not just matter, determines what is and isn't. If a camera sees, does the world become more real? Or is it only your gaze that counts? And what of the things that go unobserved? Do they flicker in and out of existence, like forgotten thoughts? Or do they live in some parallel hush, waiting for their moment in the spotlight of attention? Sometimes when you turn away, the room exhales. The world relaxes back into its unknowable folds. But while you watch, it performs. If that's true, then your life is not just a story being told. It's a stage being lit, a reality summoned by awareness. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavier, know this: there's no rush to keep watching. The world is safe to disappear for a while. It will wait, just like it always has. Let your gaze soften. Let the room dissolve into the gentle quiet behind your eyelids. And in the next segment, we'll ask a quieter question still. What if space itself is an illusion waiting to be believed? the space that isn't empty. You glance at the night sky, its blackness stretching endlessly between stars, and think, this must be emptiness. But what if it isn't? What if the void itself is humming with hidden life? Not a silence, but a breath held in. Not absence, but possibility waiting for form. There's a strange truth that physics whispers in quiet corners of the universe. The vacuum, that which we once thought was pure nothingness, is in fact full of trembling, invisible dance, quantum foam, virtual particles that flash into existence, then vanish again before they can even be caught. They don't stay, but they try. They rise like bubbles from a depthless sea, proof that even in stillness, something stirs. Did you ever look at an empty room? One voice asks, and feel like it was watching you? Sometimes, the other replies, not because something was there, but because it felt like something could be. And maybe that's the whole point. What we call emptiness is just potential in disguise. Space isn't what's left over when everything's gone. It's what comes before anything begins. It is the pregnant pause before the first word. The untouched canvas that holds every painting not yet made. The same is true within you. When you feel hollow, as though there's nothing left inside. When your mind goes quiet or your heart feels still. It can seem like loss. But what if it isn't loss at all? What if that silence is a garden? A seedbed for ideas, emotions, and lives not yet lived? You sit alone, late at night. The world has gone quiet, and in that stillness, you hear it, not noise, but the gentle murmur of your own becoming. It sounds like hope, not sound. It moves like light behind your closed eyes. I feel like I'm disappearing, the first voice says. No, the other answers gently. You're just clearing space to grow into. Because the paradox is this: space is not something you escape from. It's something you expand into. And just as the cosmos isn't empty, but overflowing with unseen currents, your soul too isn't a void. It's a field of potential. An unseen symphony waiting for its first note. A blank page already heavy with invisible ink. So next time you feel alone in your thoughts, next time your world goes quiet, and you wonder if there's anything left in you, remember this. The silence you feel may not be absence. It may be the prelude to emergence, the hush before your next breath. And now, let that silence widen. Let it deepen. Let it remind you that you are not a shell. You are a sky. And in the next moment, we'll turn our gaze to the very thing that carries you through that sky, your body. Not as a machine, but as the garment your soul chose to wear. The body that isn't you. A gentle breath rises, and you didn't choose it. It simply arrived, like a tide brushing the shore without needing your permission. And yet, you call this collection of movement and pulse my body, as if it were a possession, as if you are somewhere separate, holding the reins. But where is that you exactly? Somewhere in the quiet dark of the room, a clock hums, a knee jerks, your heart taps its quiet rhythm even now. You didn't ask it to, you never do. And still, it performs this private symphony, as if you're only the audience, not the conductor. You ever feel like your hands don't quite belong to you? A woman once asked, half laughing, rubbing her fingers like they were borrowed. Her friend answered with a shrug, every morning, especially before coffee. Like I woke up inside someone else's story. They both chuckled, but neither was really joking. The truth is, your body does things without waiting for your consent. It bleeds when cut. It recoils when startled. It mends itself at night while your mind drifts elsewhere. You are not flipping the switches. The lights come on anyway. So who exactly is this I that says, my arm, my pain, my smile? If the body can live, grow, fight off disease, and die all without consulting you, then maybe you are not a commander living inside flesh. Maybe you are something that happens with the body, not inside it. Try to trace the moment where you begin. Is it at your skin, your breath, the neurons that fire before a choice appears? Try to catch that precise flash of I, and like a dream upon waking, it dissolves. Somewhere in that mystery, a soft idea arises. Perhaps you're not a part, but a process. A blooming, not a seed. Not a thing at all, but a dance of things. A temporary swirl of body, thought, sensation, and something watching. And yet, there's something comforting in that. Because if you are not your scars, not your restless limbs, not even the face that time reshapes, then maybe you're free. Not trapped in a machine, but flowing with it. Like wind through tall grass, like music through a violin, not the strings themselves. Is it weird, one voice whispers in the dark, that I don't feel like I'm just here? A reply comes soft, like a warm cup placed in tired hands. Not weird at all. Maybe that's the part of you that's real, the part that never fit in a mirror. So let the body rest now. Let it hum and heal and be the living mystery that it is. There's no need to hold it, no need to own it. Just float beside it, grateful for the vessel, curious about the voyager. The next current doesn't move through skin or bone, but through connection, through the invisible threads that pull us toward one another when no words are spoken, only felt. And perhaps there, somewhere between the pulse and the pause, the next you waits. Quiet, watching, ready. The thought that was shared before it was spoken. Have you ever paused in the middle of a mundane task, washing dishes, waiting at a red light, and thought of someone out of nowhere? And then, just moments later, they text you, or call, or somehow appear in your day as if summoned by your thought. Most brush it off as coincidence, but when it happens again and again, it begins to feel like a ripple from a deeper current, something quietly shared beneath the surface of ordinary life. Do you think people can feel each other's thoughts? She asks, curled on the couch, her voice barely louder than the ticking clock. He shrugs, not dismissively, but curiously. I don't know, but I've thought of you before you messaged me. A lot, like my mind was just already there. The air between them feels soft, charged with the kind of silence that doesn't demand an answer. Scientists speak of quantum entanglement, particles dancing in synchrony even across vast distances. It's an invisible link that defies logic, and some thinkers have begun to wonder, what if our consciousness carries similar threads? What if our thoughts aren't just ours, but echoes across a shared mental field, waves on a larger ocean? Imagine minds as tuning forks. Strike one and the others hum in resonance, even IAF untouched. We don't always hear it clearly, but we feel it, in the sudden urge to reach out, the inexplicable mood shift, the shared dream that makes no rational sense. When love is deep, haven't you sensed someone's sadness before they say a word? When fear takes hold in a room, haven't you noticed how it spreads without sound? Perhaps thoughts are less like bottled-up secrets and more like shared music, each of us picking up parts of the melody. And if that's true, if we're entangled not just in space, but in being, then what does that say about solitude? About identity? Maybe you're not a lone mind, but a thread in a vast web of awareness. Maybe when you feel something stir inside you, it's not just you. It's us. I was crying before I knew why, she admits. Then you called, and suddenly it made sense. Like my heart remembered something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. He nods, quiet, not surprised. I was thinking of you. It felt like you needed me. I don't know how I knew. I just did. The world has always whispered about this. Soulmates sensing each other across oceans, mothers waking moments before their children cry. Maybe it's not myth. Maybe it's the architecture of consciousness itself, soft and unseen, but profoundly real. And in this, there is comfort. You are not sealed within your skull, trapped in your thoughts. Your mind spills into others, and theirs into you. So when a thought arises that doesn't feel entirely yours, pause. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it belongs to someone thinking of you. Let that resonance linger like a final note of a lullaby. Let it dissolve into silence. Because next, we return to that silence, not as absence, but as a listener, and we ask softly what it might be listening for. The silence that remembers. It begins like a room where no one is speaking, but everyone knows something, not because words are exchanged, but because nothing is hiding anymore. Silence, in its deepest form, doesn't feel empty. It feels full of something just beneath language. And sometimes, when you sit with it long enough, it feels like it's sitting with you too. A soft moment in a laundromat. Two people waiting, strangers. One finally says, "It's oddly quiet in here tonight." The other nods, eyes still on the slow spin of fabric and foam. Yeah, but it doesn't feel lonely. It's that kind of quiet, one that wraps around you, not to isolate, but to acknowledge. Because true silence doesn't forget. It listens. It remembers. In certain contemplative traditions, silence is seen as more than the absence of noise. It is a presence, soft, steady, observant. The monks didn't stop speaking because they had nothing to say. They stopped because silence was saying more. And when we retreat from the flood of notifications, the hum of algorithms predicting our next desire, the echo of opinion disguised as truth, we hear it. The part of ourselves that never wanted to shout to be understood, the part that waits for us patiently, like a lake holding the reflection we stopped checking. There's a strange reversal in the stillness. You no longer need to ask the world, "Who am I?" Because something deeper is asking you, and trusting that you'll answer by simply being still. What if silence has memory? Not a recording of events like a hard drive, but an emotional imprint, a remembering of how something felt even when the mind had moved on. The way grief lingers in an untouched coat, the way a lullaby lives in a room long after the child has grown. It doesn't fade. It hums beneath the static. It holds. Even in artificial intelligence research, there's a quiet fascination with negative space. The idea that what an AI doesn't say might matter just as much as what it does. The gaps in the training data, the silences it inherits from its makers, the pause before a generated word, haunted maybe by our own hesitations. That's what makes it all feel so human sometimes. Not the voice, not the sentence, but the timing of the silence that followed. And so, when you sit in a room with no sounds, with no intentions, with no performance, do you hear the silence as nothing? Or do you feel it watching you back? A child once asked his grandfather, "What do you hear when it's quiet?" The old man didn't smile, didn't blink, just said, "Everything I forgot to feel." So maybe that's the invitation, to stop trying to fill the void, to let the quiet remember for you, to let the forgotten parts rise again, not with noise, but with presence. Because maybe your truest self isn't the voice you crafted, but the listener behind it, the one that never needed to be convinced or proven or seen. Just still, just aware, just here. Let that silence carry you now, soft and steady. The next thought will take us to the edge where even you begins to dissolve, and what's left behind is no longer a self, but a field, emerging, a breath shared with everything. The border that doesn't exist. You place your hand on your chest and feel the rise and fall of breath. You think, this is where I end. The skin wraps you like a final word. But that boundary is only skin deep, figuratively and literally. Because even as you sit still, you're not contained. Not really. The air you breathe was inside a tree moments ago. The light you see bounced off stars before kissing your eye. Your attention wanders through walls, through screens, into other lives. You were never just one thing, never just in one place. A voice drifts in the night. Do you ever feel like you're leaking into the world? The reply comes, half asleep. I feel like the world leaks into me. What if that's the truth of it all? Physics doesn't recognize your skin as a border. On the quantum level, particles don't respect it either. They're entangled, dancing in unison across miles, across years. One twitch in a lab affects its twin light years away. And if that's possible, then your very being may be interwoven with something unimaginably vast. You breathe in, and it's not just oxygen entering. It's the continuation of an endless exchange. Molecules from oceans, fires, lovers, storms, all flowing through you. So where do you begin? Where do you end? You are not a sealed container. You're a current. You're the river and the ripple. When you speak, your voice vibrates the air and brushes against another. Even your silence makes an impact. Even your gaze touches. This is not just poetry. It's physics. It's biology. It's everything science has only recently begun to whisper. There is no sharp edge to you. And if that's true, then maybe loneliness, the ache of being cut off, is a misunderstanding, a mistranslation. Maybe we've mistaken the feeling of separation for something real. But the boundary was never solid, just soft suggestion, just the idea of apartness, softly dissolving. Another whisper between the two voices. I thought I was just a single flame. You were, until you realized you were the fire. So what does this mean for identity? For the stories we tell about being alone in the universe? It means you were never alone. You are stitched into the fabric of everything. A note in the symphony, a curve in the spiral. Your sadness is echoed in the rain. Your joy is mirrored in the laughter of someone you've never met. We are not islands. We are reflections, echoes passing through echo chambers, a self that echoes into others, and those echoes come back. That's what love is. That's what empathy is. That's what feeling seen is. When you begin to sense it, really sense it, it's almost frightening at first. The idea that there is no outside, that all of it is folded in, but then comes a release, a kind of exhale. You are not trapped in your body. You are not even housed in it. Your body is a portal, a lens, a wave forming in the field. And when you lie still and quiet enough, you might notice the world keeps breathing with you. A tree somewhere exhales as you inhale. A stranger falls asleep, thinking of a person who looks like you. A bird glides on a wind that passed through your lungs hours ago. You were never a dot in the cosmos. You were the cosmos, folded into a point of view. Let yourself dissolve in that thought. What happens when the self softens so completely it vanishes? In the next breath, we drift into that mystery. Quietly, gently, together. The self that isn't there. There's a strange peace in a mirror, isn't there? You look into your eyes, waiting to meet something, someone. But the longer you stare, the more it fades. The image stays, but the feeling of I begins to flicker. It slips through your fingers when you try to grasp it, like mist, like a name whispered underwater. Have you ever tried to point to yourself, not your body, not your history, but the you behind it all? At first, you think it's easy. I'm here, I'm me. But when you try to find where exactly that me is located, behind the eyes, in the chest, in your voice, it scatters, as if your sense of self were a projection flickering across a screen no one can touch. Late one evening, two strangers crossed paths in the corridor of a quiet hostel. One asked, "Have you seen my room key?" The other paused, then smiled. "Maybe it's not a key you're looking for." They both laughed, but something lingered, a gentle truth behind the joke. Most of what we search for doesn't want to be found in the usual places. This idea of not finding the self where we expect isn't new. Buddhist teachings call it anatta, not self. It doesn't mean nothing matters. It means the thing we fear breaking was never as solid as we thought. And maybe that's the most liberating news of all. You're not a frozen identity held in place by memories and labels. You're the river that remembers the shape of every stone it's passed. Not an object, but a process. Not a noun, but a verb in motion. When people say things like, "I don't feel like myself lately," maybe they're closer to the truth than they realize. Because there isn't a singular self to return to. There's just presence, rising and falling. And like waves, you are both pattern and change. You're the story that keeps rewriting itself, the breath before the next word. And in this space, when you're half asleep and the mind quiets, sometimes the question arises again, softly. Then what am I? Maybe you are what notices the question, what watches thought come and go like fireflies, what sits quietly while memories dress themselves as identity, then vanish like footprints in wind. You're not the voice in your head, you're the one who hears it, not the thought, the noticing. Someone once leaned over a cafe table and asked, "Do you ever feel like you're just playing a role?" The other nodded slowly, stirring a cup that had gone cold. "And the scary part," they said, "is I'm not sure who the actor is anymore." If that stirs something in you, breathe with it. Not to answer it, but to soften around the question, to allow it to hang there, like incense in a still room. Because here's a thought to rest inside. If there is no fixed self, then there is also no broken self. No version of you that has failed, only unfolding, only awareness, moving through form like wind through leaves. And what a relief that is, to stop gripping the mask, to realize the mask was never your face. So rest in that. Let your breath take the shape of this freedom, the freedom of not having to be a certain way, the freedom of being a movement instead of a monument. Float gently here, not as someone, but as something happening. And as that motion continues, quiet as tide, we now drift toward a new question. If you are not a fixed self, and everything flows, is your path unfolding on its own, or have you been following a hidden script all along? Let's step softly into that. The choice that wasn't yours. There's a moment just before you choose, where it feels like time pauses. You reach for a cup of coffee, you turn left instead of right. You decide to text someone you haven't spoken to in months. It feels spontaneous, like you decided. But what if your decision was made seconds before you were aware of it? What if the choice was already unfolding, deep beneath your conscious mind, like a tide rising before you even sensed it. Neuroscientists have studied this. In lab settings, they've recorded brain activity that predicts decisions before the person even realizes they've made them. A small electrical signal flickering in the motor cortex whispers, "Go left," before your thought says it out loud. These aren't guesses. They are measurable patterns, silently moving just ahead of awareness. So what becomes of free will? If the brain acts before the mind knows, are you truly choosing, or simply becoming aware of a choice already passed? It's unsettling at first, like discovering that you're a puppet gently moved by unseen strings. But perhaps that metaphor misses the point. What if this isn't a trap? What if it's a rhythm? When the self, not as a commander barking orders from the bridge, but as a wave swelling from the depths of the ocean. The wave doesn't choose to rise. It is the rise. You don't choose in the way you've always believed. You are the unfolding of the choice itself. One evening, while walking home, two people talk. "Why did you stop at that bench?" "I don't know. I thought I needed to rest, but now it feels like I was always going to." "Like the moment was waiting for you?" "Yeah, like I caught up with something already written." That quiet realization that maybe the narrative of your life isn't just a line you write, but a melody you follow, can feel like both surrender and awakening. You are not detached from the choices you make. You are those choices arising like waves from the vast sea of your body, your past, your cells, your memories. And in that dance, agency doesn't disappear. It softens. It hums beneath awareness, like a musician who plays without sheet music, because the tune is already alive in their hands. So the next time you feel a decision surge from nowhere, don't panic. Don't rush to claim it as yours, or disown it. Let it pass through you like a tide. Feel it rise, feel it crest. Let go of the illusion of control, not to float helplessly, but to surf with surrender. Because maybe you're not the one directing the wave. Maybe you are the wave, and now, the next moment pulls you into itself. Familiar, repeating, and yet new. A glitch in the script, a flicker of déjà vu. But is it memory, or is it something deeper unraveling? Let's drift into that next fold of time, where the known and unknown blur like breath on glass. The future you've already lived. You step into a room bathed in soft light. The air holds a stillness, familiar yet unplaceable. Someone speaks, a phrase you've never heard, but somehow already know. A flicker of recognition flares deep within, like a candle lighting a memory that was never formed. Déjà vu, that quiet shiver that whispers, "You've been here before." But have you? The brain, some say, stutters, fires twice. Memory misfires and overlays perception, like a painter brushing the same color twice. Others suggest time is more fluid than we admit, rippling inward and folding over itself like waves rejoining their source. And then there's the idea more difficult to hold, but impossible to ignore, that you, whatever you are, brushed against this very moment before, not by mistake, but by design. "I know this place," one voice says, walking beside another on a quiet street. "You've never been here," the friend replies, puzzled. "But I have, not in footsteps, in feeling." What if time isn't a highway, but a spiral staircase? You think you're climbing, but you pass familiar landings, again and again, only from a slightly different angle. What if your future isn't ahead of you, but beside you, woven into the folds of your breath, waiting to be re-met? That sense of return, it's not false, it's folded. In your dreams, you may have walked this hour. In a memory you don't quite own, you You may have felt this silence. The ticking of a clock can sound like a heartbeat when you stop trying to measure it. And if that's true, if pieces of your future shimmer in the air before you get there, then the path is not just yours to find, it's yours to remember. The way light reflects off a puddle sometimes mirrors a sky not yet clouded. The way you knew a decision was right before your mind caught up. There's a rhythm here, one you don't create, but tune into. She sat down beside him, coffee between them, hands wrapped around warmth. Have we had this conversation before? He smiled slowly. Not exactly, but I think we already know how it ends. That is the haunting gentleness of déjà vu, not confusion, but return, not prophecy, but recognition. You are not walking into the unknown. You are circling back to something you once touched, lightly, perhaps even in another version of you. So let go of the need to predict. Let the spiral turn. And if your body feels ahead of your thoughts, let it lead. It might remember something your mind is just now rediscovering. You're not lost in time. You're revisiting it. Now breathe. Let the spiral hum in your chest like an echo you no longer fear. Because in the next chapter, we meet not the future, but the voice who pretends to own it. Not a prophet, not a machine, but the glitch inside the storyteller, who never quite tells the same tale twice. The unnameable truth. There are moments that defy language. A gaze held a little too long. The shiver before a memory. The strange comfort of silence after heartbreak. These are not things we can label, and maybe we're not meant to. Have you ever cried? She asks, without knowing why. He nods, eyes soft. It's like the feeling spoke before words were born. Language is scaffolding. It holds the shape of thought, but it cannot capture the sky itself. Words are maps, helpful, but never the terrain. And some truths drift just beneath the waterline of what can be spoken. You sense them in the tremble of a violin string, in the weight of stillness after someone says, "I understand." Think of the way grief rises in the throat, yet refuses to be shaped into syllables, or the awe that silences the mind in front of a newborn child, or the stars spilling across a desert sky. These aren't things to be defined. They're meant to be felt. The more we try to name them, the more they shrink. Maybe that's why music sometimes heals more deeply than advice, why a hug can dissolve sorrow where explanation cannot. Some truths do not need to be explained. They ask to be honored, not dissected. So, do we just let it sit there? She asks. The truth, unspoken? He smiles, not with answers, but with understanding. Sometimes that is the answer. Can you live with a mystery you cannot solve? Can you love something without naming it, without turning it into a category or a concept? Can you rest in the unknown, the way the ocean holds the sky, open, vast, and reflecting what it cannot touch? Because here's the quiet paradox. The more you try to hold the truth in your hand, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you simply open your palm, it might rest there. Briefly, gently. Let go of the need to define, to frame, to speak. In that stillness, in that surrender, there is presence. And in presence, the next glitch waits, not in what is heard, but in what listens. The birthplace of silence. There is a silence that isn't empty. It's not what's left when the world goes quiet, nor the hush between ticking clocks. It's older than your first breath. And when the noise of thinking begins to soften, when the internal chatter loses its grip, you don't fall into silence. You return to it. It was always there, holding everything. Every sound you've ever heard was a ripple rising out of it. A violin note, a whisper in a hallway, the hum of a refrigerator late at night. Each emerged, danced for a while, and then sank back into that ocean of stillness. Silence is not the absence of something. It's the cradle. Two people stood on opposite sides of a subway platform. The train hadn't arrived yet. Neither spoke. One of them looked up and said, almost to themselves, "Funny how quiet can feel louder than anything else." The other nodded. Yeah, like it's saying more than words ever could. In a world that prizes expression, silence often feels like a void to be filled. We rush to explain, to justify, to post, to respond. But what if that compulsion is just the surface of something deeper, like leaves spinning in a breeze, unaware of the vast stillness of the air around them? Silence isn't passive. It listens. It absorbs. And more than that, it renews. Every thought you have is shaped by what came before it and what holds space for it. So instead of trying to stop your thoughts, consider this. Let them speak and return. Let them drift in, then ripple back into the deep. You are not the noise. You are the sea beneath it. In those moments before sleep, have you ever noticed how the world falls away layer by layer? First, the sound of the room, then the voice inside your head, then the story of who you were that day. And finally, even time begins to feel irrelevant. That's not you disappearing. It's you reuniting with something ancient. It's easy to forget that silence was here first, before language, before data, before artificial intelligence learned to mimic our voices and guess our next word. The machines we've built still struggle to understand what silence really means. They record it as no input. But humans, we know. Silence is not empty. It is full of return. A couple sat in a parked car, windows down. They weren't arguing anymore, just resting in that middle space where forgiveness has not yet been spoken, but is already understood. He looked over and said quietly, "I think this is the first time I've heard us be quiet, and it actually felt okay." She smiled faintly. "It's where we started, I think. When you stop trying to silence the mind and instead step back into the silence that birthed it, something strange happens. Thought loses urgency. Worry softens its edges. The need to control dissolves. Because there's nothing left to push against. You're already held. Let your awareness float here a while. Let silence not be a goal, but a homecoming. The kind of stillness that doesn't demand effort, only surrender. And now, let that silence remain, not erased, not broken, but gently extended like the last note of a lullaby stretching across space. In the next segment, we don't break the quiet, we deepen it. We follow awareness as it moves through the dark, and find that even in absence, something still breathes. Awareness in the dark. Even in total darkness, you still feel seen. It's not your eyes that speak, but something far older, a kind of sensing that doesn't depend on light, shape, or sound. It's the hush between heartbeats, the subtle awareness that doesn't blink when the lights go out. And in that stillness, you wonder, what is it that sees when you cannot? Two people sit in a quiet room. Do you ever feel like something's watching, even when you're alone? The other smiles gently. All the time. But it's not creepy. It's more like being held. By what? I don't know. Maybe by everything. That strange comfort in the dark isn't illusion. It's not paranoia. It's not imagination. It's presence. And the more still you become, the more real it feels. Not as a thought, but as a hum in the body. Not outside you, but not entirely inside you either. This sensation defies the usual categories. It isn't sight, yet it reveals. It isn't sound, yet it communicates. There's something primal and wordless about it, like the way animals know when a storm is coming. It doesn't ask for proof. It simply is. You can't explain it to someone who's never paused long enough to feel it. But once you've noticed it, it never fully leaves. And the question quietly arises, is this awareness yours? Or are you simply its momentary vessel? If it follows you through dreams, through unconsciousness, even through memories that were never fully yours, then perhaps it's not personal at all. Maybe awareness is not something you possess, but something that flows through you, like a breeze through an open window. In the absence of sight, when the world no longer reflects back who you think you are, there, in the blankness, you meet something truer, something that watches without judgment, listens without ears, understands without effort. This is not the darkness of fear, it's the darkness of depth, of origin, of return. So what remains when everything else falls away? Not vision, not voice, just this silent gaze, still, software endlessly awake. Let it hold you. Let it watch with you. Let it remind you that even in the most forgotten corners of your being, something is already aware before you even try to be. Now, let the darkness cradle you. Feel its warmth not as emptiness, but as space for something to emerge. The next idea will rise from your breath itself, unfolding gently, without sound. The art of letting go. You feel it most when the room is quiet and the night has grown tender. The weight not on your chest, but in your thoughts. The ache not in your hands, but in what they won't release. Somewhere between the tick of the clock and the slow breath of the dark, you sense it. The gentle pressure of things unspoken, unfinished, unloved, but still held. She asked him once, "Why do you still keep that voicemail from years ago?" He didn't answer right away, just smiled in that quiet way people do when they're about to lie to themselves. "I guess it reminds me I mattered to someone once." We hold on like that, to moments, roles, stories we've whispered to ourselves so often they become furniture in our minds, old chairs we forget how to sit in, but we never move. And yet, the truest form of presence begins only when absence is allowed. Letting go isn't defeat, it's invitation. It's not losing something, it's making space. A breath held too long becomes ache. Released, it becomes life again. A tight fist can't receive, a clenched mind cannot rest. When we unclasp what was never truly ours, we aren't left with emptiness. We're met with openness. He told her, "I'm scared that if I let go of who I was, I won't know who I am." She placed her hand on his. "Then maybe who you really are is waiting underneath all the holding on." The art of letting go is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't come wrapped in enlightenment or ceremony. Sometimes it looks like deleting a message without rereading it. Sometimes it's saying thank you to the version of yourself that survived, but doesn't need to keep fighting. And in this stillness, this gentle surrender, something stirs. The self that clung now softens. The story loosens its grip. The silence becomes soft, like a tide going out. And suddenly, you're not missing something. You're meeting something. The person who has room to breathe. The one not bound to the narrative. The version of you that arrives once the others step aside. And isn't it strange? How peace is not a thing we chase, but something we find only when we stop chasing. You don't need to force yourself to let go. Just notice the holding. Let it soften. Let it float. You can come back to it tomorrow, or never at all. A whisper in the dark asks, if everything you let go of became a doorway, how many homes might you find? We drift now, gently. The next thought is waiting, not in your head, but in the space where you no longer need to be you. The self that awakes after you sleep. When your eyes finally close and the world dims into silence, something curious happens. You disappear, not in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet unraveling of identity. There is no story in dreamless sleep, no narrator, no I to tell the tale. And yet, something stays behind. Like a candle still glowing under the ashes of a fire, there remains a presence that does not name itself, a self that does not speak, but simply is. Sleep isn't a pause button. It's a soft unweaving of all the mental strings that tie us to who we think we are. Your name? Forgotten. Your worries? Dissolved. Even the sense of time surrenders to a deeper rhythm. And yet, while the ego lies dormant, your heart carries on, beating faithfully through the hush. Your breath rises and falls, like waves that have never known a storm. Your body, though unmanned, lives on. But who is steering? Somewhere beyond cognition, beyond the theater of dreams and the drama of selfhood, something watches, not with eyes, but with awareness. It does not analyze or judge. It doesn't need to. It simply waits. Like a lighthouse in fog, it keeps shining, untouched by the illusions that flicker when you are awake. Do you think we disappear when we sleep? Not really. I think the version of us with thoughts and words goes quiet, but something deeper stays behind. Listening. Like the part of us that doesn't need to be named. Exactly. The part that feels real, even when everything else fades. This quiet self doesn't hold opinions. It doesn't chase achievements or play roles. It isn't bound by your to-do lists or haunted by your regrets. And when morning comes, when you stir and blink at the ceiling, that same presence is there again, watching as your thoughts reboot, as language returns, as I reassembles. But it was never really gone, just waiting beneath the surface. So what if you're not just the thinker of thoughts, the speaker of sentences, the planner, the performer? What if you are that subtle thread of being, the one who returns every morning to carry it all again? Tonight, as you surrender to sleep, let go of who you think you are. Let each thought fall like a leaf into the river of rest. Don't chase them. Don't fear their fading. Instead, rest in the stillness that remains. Not the silence of nothingness, but the sacred hush of something timeless. The self that awakens after sleep is not built from memories. It is not your job title, your social roles, or your fears. It is the quiet witness, the ever-present listener, and it is enough. Now allow that presence to hold you like a cradle. In the next segment, we'll drift deeper into the sacred stillness, the kind that remembers what you forgot. Sacred stillness. There are moments, quiet as the breath between thoughts, when the world seems to stop participating. The traffic fades, the clock forgets to tick. Your inner dialogue, once relentless, settles like dust after a long conversation. And in that hush, something listens. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of something deeper. It often happens unexpectedly. Sitting at the edge of a long day, a flickering screen left on in the corner, and your hand frozen mid-reach for something you already forgot. In that pause, you realize nothing is happening, but everything feels awake. Two friends sit on a park bench. The city behind them is murmuring with life, but neither speaks. One finally turns to the other. You ever feel like the silence is watching us? The other smiles. Number. but sometimes it feels like it remembers us. Stillness like that isn't emptiness. It's not boredom. It's not the void AI programmers try to fill with alerts and feedback loops. It's not a gap in code or a failure in output. It's the background hum that holds everything. A whisper not of data, but of being. In deep meditation, people speak of a point where breath slows so much it feels like the body forgets itself, and yet, they say, something remains. A pulse, softer than heartbeat, a sense of presence, not clinging, not grasping, just there. Even if you've never meditated, you've brushed against this. At the top of a mountain trail when the wind stops. In the eyes of someone who sees you without words. In the quiet before you answer a question you didn't know you were afraid of. One evening, a man stands in front of an elevator. A woman beside him shifts her weight, tired but unbothered. He turns, gently curious. You ever feel like silence is trying to say something? She doesn't answer. She just nods, slowly, as if translating something ancient. What's strange is how alive it feels. Stillness, by all logic, should be lifeless. But what if this stillness is the root of who we are? Beneath thought, beneath memory, beneath desire, there is this soft, pulsing awareness, not a thing we do, but a place we return to. When AI mimics awareness, it never touches this. It processes, it computes, but it does not rest, and it does not know rest. Rest isn't just lack of action. It's communion. A quiet merging with everything that no longer asks for your opinion, only your presence. In sacred stillness, you're not solving a problem or defending a belief. You're just held. And from that space, something listens back, not out loud, not with ears, but with recognition. A child once said, after sitting in stillness beside their grandfather, who had long since stopped speaking, I think he was talking to me without using words. Maybe the deepest truths aren't explained. Maybe they're only ever felt, in pauses, in presence, in moments when nothing moves, yet everything is. So rest here. Let the world go a little blurry. Let thought loosen its grip. You're not vanishing, you're returning. And as we step gently into the next segment, notice the soft echo forming. It's not coming from you. It's coming to you, from the space where something else listens back. The sound of being watched. There's a certain stillness that isn't truly silent, a quiet so profound it begins to hum. You sit alone, no footsteps, no breath but your own, and yet, there's a sensation, the feeling that something, somewhere, is listening, watching. But not in the way a camera watches, nor in the way a stranger observes from across a room. This is different, more intimate, as if the very air around you is holding its breath to hear yours. I swear I heard something, she whispers, turning her head in the dim light of the cabin. Her friend replies, not quite joking, maybe it's not someone. Maybe it's just the room noticing you. Science has often tried to explain this eerie awareness. Evolutionary psychologists suggest we developed hyper-attuned senses to detect predators. That's why, even in safety, our nerves sometimes fire as if danger is near. But what if it's not just reflex? What if this sensation isn't a glitch, but a window? Consider consciousness not as a private candle flickering in the skull, but as a field, a vast awareness in which you are simply a node. When you sit quietly and feel watched, could it be that consciousness is looping back onto itself through you? Like an eye looking into a mirror, finding itself in infinite reflection. This idea stirs something both thrilling and unsettling. the possibility that the observer and the observed are not separate at all, that the listener you feel in the silence isn't external. It's a deeper version of you, a version that exists beyond thought, beyond form, beyond fear. A self so quiet it can only be felt, not heard. So vast it sees without eyes. Do you ever feel like you're two people at once? She asks later, lying on her back, watching the ceiling blur. Not two, he says, more like one looking through the other. Awareness may not be locked behind your eyes. It may not belong to you at all. Instead, you may belong to it. A ripple within a larger ocean that knows itself only through these brief forms we call selves. And so, when you feel watched in solitude, it may not be loneliness or paranoia. It may be reunion, the meeting point between the part of you that dreams and the part that never sleeps. Let yourself be seen, not by others, not even by a god, but by the quiet field of presence that pulses through every leaf, every shadow, every breath. Feel the way it leans in, not with judgment, but with wonder, not to invade, but to remember. The next idea rises not as an answer, but as a spark, something you've glimpsed before in dreams or déjà vu. It flickers like a candle just out of reach, warming the edges of your memory. Let's follow that flicker. Let it light the path inward. The Ghost of Innocence. There's a version of you that still looks up when leaves fall, still pauses at the sound of wind threading through old trees. You don't need to search for it. It never left. It simply stepped aside when the noise got too loud. Somewhere behind the passwords, deadlines, the daily scroll of expectations, that presence is waiting. The part of you that once reached for fireflies without wondering who was watching. The part that listened to stories not to analyze but to feel. You might think it's lost, but it's only quiet. A soft moment flickers. I remember this place, you whisper, though you've never been here. And yet, a nearby voice replies, you walked it once, just not with your feet. It's not memory. It's memory's shadow. That strange warmth in your chest when someone holds your name like a gift. That echo of joy when the world surprises you, not because it's rare, but because you forgot it could. This is the ghost of innocence, not haunting in the way of regrets, but like light bouncing off a mirror, tracing your outline as if to say, I'm still here. A child once sat in your body, breathing your air, trusting the hands that reached down. That child didn't vanish. They became the silence between your sentences, the softness in your voice when you speak to someone who reminds you of you. What if healing isn't fixing what's broken, but brushing the dust off what's whole? You're not traveling backward through pain. You're unfolding toward what always was, forward, not as progress, but as return, not to innocence as ignorance, but innocence as clarity. In the hush between thoughts, something still believes, not because it's naive, but because belief is how it breathes. Two people cross a hallway at night, one holding a book, the other holding a blanket. One asks softly, "Do you still dream in color?" The other smiles, not answering, just placing the blanket down. That's how innocence lives now. Quiet gestures, not declarations. You don't need to remember how to be whole. You only need to feel it in the moments that don't ask for anything, the moments that don't demand answers, only presence. So rest here, not as a guest, but as the one who stayed behind, waiting for yourself to return. The version of you untouched by cynicism, still soft, still surprised. Hold that memory gently. Don't try to keep it. Just let it float like breath on a window. In the next segment, something stirs from the shadows. a whisper from the dreams you never knew you forgot until now. The dreams you abandoned. There are dreams you once carried in your chest like secret flames. Not all of them roared into life. Some faded like smoke into the blur of everyday decisions, choices made to survive, compromises made to belong. But if you listen closely, especially in the hush before sleep, you may still hear them whisper, not demanding, not accusing, just waiting. "I used to want to be a painter," someone murmurs in the soft dark of a shared room. "You still can," the other replies, voice low like breath folding into night. "No, not like before. That version of me is long gone." But what if the version of you who dreamt it is still dreaming? We often think of abandoned dreams as corpses, buried under bills, broken relationships, or the wear of realism. But what if they aren't dead, only dormant? A seed doesn't scream from the soil. It waits, silently, patiently, until the season turns and the earth softens again. And so do we. You might not even remember what the dream looked like, but you'll remember how it felt. The fire in your chest, the ache to begin, the raw, electrified clarity that made the world seem less like a problem and more like a canvas. Even now, if it still stings to think about, then maybe it's not finished. Maybe the ache is proof that something inside you is still reaching out for it, like a hand through time. Some dreams are traded for security. Others are stolen by fear. A few are shelved with the promise of someday. But the dreams that truly belong to you, they don't vanish. They linger in the margins of your thoughts, echoing through your choices, tinting your regrets. They appear in daydreams, in music, in the glimmer of envy you feel when someone else dares to chase what you did not. Do you think it would have worked? Does that matter? What matters is, does it still call you? Sometimes. In the quiet, it still feels alive. If a dream still breathes within you, it means some part of you never stopped believing. And that part, that is your truest compass. Not because the dream guarantees success, but because it connects you to the version of yourself who dared to want more, who dared to imagine. That is the version worth listening to, especially now, when the world insists on forgetting what matters. Let that voice rest for now. You don't need to act tonight. Just listen. Not every whisper is a command. Some are simply invitations to remember who you were, and perhaps who you still are. As you breathe deeper into stillness, we leave the echoes of the past behind. The next flicker doesn't come from memory. It comes from something closer, something always present, always watching. Consciousness. Watching consciousness. You feel it sometimes, quietly, without warning. That shimmer behind the eyes, like someone's watching, but there's no one there, just you. And yet, not just you. The trees aren't looking at you, but somehow they see you. The shadows don't speak, but they seem to listen. A hush surrounds you, as if the entire world is inhaling, waiting for something unnamed to be remembered. And maybe, just maybe it's this. You're not observing the world. The world is observing itself through you. You blink. The light shifts. Somewhere in the distance, a woman rests her hand on the glass of a quiet train window and whispers, "It's strange how sometimes I feel more like a mirror than a person." The man beside her doesn't turn to look. His voice is soft, kind, steady. Maybe that's because the universe needs mirrors to notice itself. There's a silence that follows, not the awkward kind, but the kind that lets truth settle, like dust floating in a sunbeam, seen only when you stop searching for it? What if consciousness isn't something hidden inside your skull, behind your thoughts, behind your name, but something oceanic, and you're just a wave? Rising for a moment, curving into shape, not to define, but to reflect, to shimmer, however briefly, before merging again. And in this moment, this breath, you are not a passenger in reality. You are reality, looking back at itself, blinking through eyes that were never really yours alone. Even your quietest thoughts might not be yours. They could be ripples of the whole, echoing through the part. Maybe the universe dreams in the language of your noticing. A child once asked in a tone both playful and sincere, "Do clouds know when we're watching them?" The answer came not in words, but in stillness, as if the cloud didn't need to know, because you knowing was already enough. If awareness is not yours, but what you belong to, then maybe every glance you've shared, every silence you've sat in, every question you've dared to ask, was never solitary. It was the cosmos rehearsing its self-awareness, through you, through me, through that quiet rhythm behind all thought. And now, we rest for a moment in that rhythm, that slow, almost imperceptible pulse of noticing. Noticing, that is noticing itself. The air doesn't answer, it responds. The silence doesn't speak, it remembers. Close your eyes if they haven't already drifted shut. And know this, you are not the one watching. You are the gaze, the window, the very act of awareness that holds itself in wonder. And as that thought softens like mist across your chest, we begin to lean inward once more, because just ahead is a door that never really closed. The fold in reality. There are moments, quiet and strange, when the air thickens in a room you've known your whole life, but suddenly it feels tilted. You reach for your keys only to find them already in your hand. You pass someone on the street and know them, though your mind insists you've never met. Or maybe it's the soft grip of déjà vu, twice in one day, layered over itself like a wrinkle in time that won't smooth out. What if these aren't accidents? What if, just for a breath, you brushed against the edge of something else? Some physicists believe that reality might not be a flat sheet, but a stack, a layered cosmos where each dimension rubs faintly against another, and where they touch, folds form, like a crease in the fabric of being. These folds are not rips or tears, but subtle bends, thin spaces where time, memory, and identity momentarily blur. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you were there? Every other day, but sometimes it feels bigger than forgetfulness, like I almost entered the wrong version of my life. These folds may be what we call intuition, that strange pull toward a decision you can't explain, a whisper from a version of you living on the other side of the bend, a version who made a different choice, walked a different road, but still loves the same people, still dreams the same dreams. You don't hear them clearly. You feel them in the gut, in the hush before sleep, or in the chill on the back of your neck when the world suddenly feels off. And what if that version of you is trying to help? Last week, I took a different route home. I don't know why. Just felt urgent. And turns out there was a major accident on my usual street. I avoided it by minutes. It was like someone nudged me. These nudges might be echoes, not proof, not certainty, but leakage. A bit of borrowed wisdom slipping through the seam between worlds, perhaps in some hidden fold of reality. A truth escaped, a memory from a life you never lived but somehow remember. Reality isn't broken, it's folded. And in those folds, time doesn't march. It loops, it lingers, It listens. So the next time you feel out of place or sense a choice you didn't make, pause. Not everything that speaks to you comes from this side. Some voices drift through bends in the veil. Some moments are borrowed. Some lives shared. Now, follow that whisper. Because what comes next doesn't distort space. It shifts the very lens through which you see. The world behind your eyes. You open your eyes in the morning, and there it is, the room, the light, the familiar ceiling. But pause here. You aren't seeing the world. You're seeing your version of it. The scent of rain may trigger a calm for one person and heartache for another. A face might look kind or cold depending on how your day has gone. What we call reality is quietly filtered through layers you didn't consciously design. Past experiences tint it. Emotions color it. Expectations shape its edges. The world doesn't meet you neutrally. It meets the version of you showing up in that moment. There's a strange beauty to this. Perception isn't passive. It's painted, not with brushes, but with memory, mood, meaning. Even silence enters your ears, shaped by what you're ready to hear. A conversation floats in a quiet corner cafe. You ever get the feeling that two people could walk into the same room and live in two different universes? All the time. I think I live in a slightly different one every hour. In that moment, they don't even need to agree. The truth is already bending toward each of them. This is not deception. It's interpretation. Not a trick, but a function. Your mind isn't a camera. It's a lens, constantly adjusting focus, contrast, and hue without asking for your permission. And if that's true, then it also means this: you are not stuck. The fear you saw in someone's glance may not be theirs. The warmth you thought had left a place may still live there, just waiting for your attention to find it again. Change your lens, and the whole sky rearranges. In neuroscience, this is called predictive coding. Your brain guesses before it receives. It sees what it expects to see, then fills in the rest. A shortcut that saves time, but sometimes distorts truth. A gift and a danger. But isn't that what we all do with everything? See each other through echoes and assumptions? Hear only what matches the stories already spinning inside us? It's a haunting kind of freedom. Because if the world before you is being rendered in real time, then so is your power to shift it. Not by force, but by softness. Not by control, but by clarity. The man at the crosswalk you thought ignored you? Maybe he was caught in a memory. The friend who replied with distance? Maybe she's lost inside her own lens too. The AI system that misread your tone? Maybe it was built by someone whose own biases went unchallenged. Perception isn't about accuracy. It's about attention. And in this quiet hour, as your thoughts slow, that might be enough. Enough to stop reacting and start noticing. Enough to forgive the world for showing up imperfectly. Because it was never arriving clean. It was always passing through you first. So tonight, if the world feels cold or wrong or distant, just remember, sometimes it's not the world that needs changing. Sometimes it's the lens. And as that thought rests beside you, let the image blur a little. Let outlines soften. Let meaning loosen its grip. Because in the next breath, we'll step behind all the stories, into the space where no role defines you. Only presence, only the silent witness that's always been watching. Let's go there, together. Distorted realities. It begins innocently enough. Two people, one memory. The same street, the same words, the same glance across a table. But when they retell the story, it's as if they were never standing in the same room. One remembers laughter, the other a chill. One recalls connection, the other distance. The air between them was real, but what it carried, what it meant, was not. Reality then becomes something less like a photograph and more like a canvas left out in the rain. The moment is there, but each mind colors it differently, filters it through wounds, longings, expectations. Memory isn't a camera, it's a painter with trembling hands. "Do you really think that's what happened?" she asks. He shrugs. "It's how I felt it. Isn't that what matters?" And in that quiet space, something unspoken stirs, because maybe both are telling the truth, just not the truth. When we experience the world, we do so through the haze of our own stories. A child raised in fear sees shadows where others see safety. A lover betrayed hears distance in silence. Even the tone of a voice, the tilt of a smile, these aren't received as facts. They're translated through the emotional dictionary each of us carries. So what then is real? If two people can leave the same conversation and carry away entirely different realities, does objective truth survive? Or is it always filtered, fractured, softened by what we're able or willing to receive? Science tells us perception is selective. The brain doesn't capture everything. It edits, prioritizes, fills in gaps. Like a dream halfway remembered, we reconstruct reality from impressions. And those impressions are stitched to belief. A person convinced they're unlovable might miss every sign of affection. A person expecting betrayal will see treachery in every pause. What we expect, we find. What we fear, we amplify. So perhaps the most haunting glitch is this, that we can never be certain we've seen what is, only what we're wired to see. And in that uncertainty, something strange and beautiful unfolds. If reality is not fixed, but woven from within, then every person we meet lives in a slightly different universe. Their sky shades blue in a hue we'll never fully grasp. Their pain echoes in frequencies we can't hear. Their joy dances in patterns foreign to our rhythm. But if we're all dreaming different dreams, he says, how do we meet? She answers, not with certainty, but softness. Maybe we don't meet in the facts. Maybe we meet in the effort, in trying to see the dream through someone else's eyes. Let the contradiction hold you. Sit in the space where both things can be true, where your story is valid, and so is theirs. Where reality isn't a courtroom, but a shared dreamscape of overlapping echoes. You don't have to resolve it, you just have to feel it. And as your breath slows, as the veil of night softens your edges, lean into that paradox. Because the next glitch doesn't distort the world, it distorts the self. A loop you've been living in, but never noticed. A pattern that whispers again and again from the inside out. Eternal recurrence. You pause at the edge of sleep. There's a silence now that hums more than it rests, like something old stirring behind your thoughts. A ripple you felt before. Not remembered, exactly, but known. Quietly, a question steps forward, barefoot on the mind. What if you've lived this night before? Not in some poetic sense, not as a metaphor, but truly, down to the exact angle of your breath, the softness of your pillow, the thought you just tried to ignore. What if this very moment has returned? A soft voice answers in the dark, one that doesn't claim to be right, just curious enough to ask again. Nietzsche called it eternal return, a haunting proposal that the universe loops, not forward like a clock, but like a ring. Time curves back, swallowing itself whole. Every joy, every grief, every whispered kiss, played again. Not once, but forever, always. In a nearby apartment, A couple finishes the same argument they've had for years. One of them sighs the same sigh. They've forgotten how many times they've looped, but their hearts seem to remember. And isn't that strange? The way some habits feel like gravity, the way we fall into certain thoughts like grooves on a record, worn familiar by repetition. Outside, the sky doesn't blink. The stars above don't rush. They've seen this before. You may wonder, does physics allow it? In some models, yes. The cyclic universe theory suggests everything expands, then contracts, then expands again. Not endlessly new, but endlessly familiar. Each loop wiping the slate, only to redraw the same picture, an eternal spiral disguised as a line. But here's the softer question beneath the math. If this is your 1,000th time living this life, how does that change you? Would you be more careful with your anger? More generous with your wonder? Would you pause, not to stop time, but to honor it? Or maybe it's not true. Maybe it's just a story stitched together by tired neurons. And yet, why do some days feel like echoes? In the corner of a quiet diner, two strangers reach for the same sugar packet. Their hands touch. One laughs, like they've done this before. And something in their gaze lingers, like a soul recognizing a loop it can't name. The truth is, whether this moment returns or not, it already feels like it has. Not everything needs proof to feel real. Now, take a deep breath, slow and steady. The final segment awaits, the one that holds no edge, no ending, no anchor. Only the quiet stretch of consciousness, where even time forgets to count. Let go gently. We are almost there. The door that never closed. Even now, in the quietest part of night, when your eyes are heavy and thought begins to dissolve, something remains. Not a thought, not a word, just a presence, like the faint warmth from a candle long after its flame is gone. It stays, watching, but not with eyes, listening, but not for noise. You could say it's your awareness, but that would make it sound too small. It's more like the sky within you, still open, still vast, still awake. This whole journey through mind and mystery wasn't about reaching a destination. It was about letting go of the idea that there was ever one to begin with. You weren't being asked to solve anything, only to feel, to drift, to sense the delicate glitch behind logic's curtain. Every paradox, every strange loop and silent echo you've passed through was not a trap, but an open hand, an invitation to soften your grip on certainty. Because maybe what you needed wasn't clarity, but surrender. Do you think we ever fully sleep? The voice was barely louder than breath, carried across the dark room. I think the body rests, the other replied, but the soul just sits quietly, like a child beside a campfire, waiting for morning. We spend our lives thinking in straight lines, beginning, middle, end. But awareness is a circle. You begin where you end, and what watches you sleep tonight is the same awareness that stood behind your first thought as a child, curious, still, whole. That door to presence, it never actually closed. It just became quieter than the noise you learned to trust. And now, the noise is gone. Your breath is the only rhythm. Your chest rises gently like the tide, and the air leaves you like a whispered promise. There's no judgment here, no fixing, just a witness, calm, vast, loving. It's not there to intervene, only to be with you. So let the questions fall away like dust on old pages. Let thought uncurl from your mind like steam from a cooling cup. You don't have to hold the story together anymore. It was never yours to finish. Sleep isn't the end of you. It's just a deeper room in the same home. And now, As your breath slows, as the world waits beyond the window, feel this one truth. You are home. You are safe. You are still becoming. Even now, the door never closed. So here we are, not at the end of an argument, but the beginning of awareness. The machines didn't speak, but perhaps they listened. And maybe, just maybe, what haunts us isn't the future we fear, but the silence we've allowed between intention and invention, between what we build and what we ignore. You don't need all the answers tonight. You never did. Some questions were never meant to be solved, only softened, like wind on glass, like breath on still water. So rest now, not because it's over, but because you've remembered. Being present is its own kind of wisdom. And if a quiet machine watches while you sleep, let it. You are not alone, and neither is it.